Good morning and welcome to the opening session of our 2021 Fall Town Meeting, being held virtually Saturday, October 16, 2021 at 8 a.m. We're continuing to make history as our Plymouth Town Meeting legislature is being convened by remote participation pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Massachusetts Acts of 2021. Town Clerk Pearl Sears has advised me we now have a quorum of at least 90 elected town meeting members, and I therefore declare that a quorum being present, the Plymouth 2021 Fall Town Meeting will come to order at 8 a.m. At this time, we'll begin with a salute to the flag, proudly led by our Plymouth Boy Scout Troop 1620, followed by our national anthem, performed by Plymouth North High School senior Hannah Flockton, an invocation offered by Father John Collody, St. Mary's Parish, and a presentation from Select Board Chair Richard Quintal. So sit back and enjoy Plymouth's virtual town meeting opening ceremonies.
Good morning. My name is Robbie Cunningham, the Senior Patrol Leader of the local BSA Troop 1620. Please rise as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
O good and loving God, as we begin this town meeting, we ask for your guidance and your blessings. We are thankful for the many ways you have watched over Plymouth and guided this town for over 400 years and sustained us in times of challenge and of difficulty. We are grateful to all those who give generously of their time and talents at these town meetings, as well as those who serve our town in so many other roles year after year. In these moments when we might disagree, help us not to be disagreeable, but endeavor to see the good in one another. Help us to be especially mindful of those who struggle with daily problems, those who feel unaccepted, those who feel uncared for. And let us conclude this blessing with an ancient prayer common to many different religious traditions. May the Lord bless us and keep us. May the Lord's face shine upon us and be gracious to us. May the Lord look upon us with kindness. May God grant us the gift of his peace. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, town meeting members. First off, I'd like to welcome new select board members, Harry Helm and Charlie Blutzer, and put a thank you out to Ken Tavares for his many years of service on the select board. I'd like to thank Police Chief Mike Botieri for his many years of running the Plymouth Police Department and being a part of that department, and Town Clerk Larry Pizer for his many, many years in the clerk's office. The first thing we'll order of business to select what we'll be focusing on after town meeting will be a search for the town manager. We've awarded a contract to a firm and we'll be setting up the search committee very soon. The second thing on the radar screen is the whole tech negotiations. As you all know, they are in decommissioning, and we've hired a firm, a new law firm that specializes in decommissioning of nuclear power plants. And we're going to be talking about the planning, how much is going into conservation, how much will be developed, and so on and so forth on the 12 to 1,500 acres. And there will be a substantial decrease in tax revenue to the community, as you will be hearing. Also on the radar screen for that in those negotiations is Chiltonville. And this board feels very strong about what happens to those 25 acres in that property, the training property in Chiltonville. And we're going to make it a point to have the people of Chiltonville, the neighbors and residents of that area, a part of our negotiations, and let them in and say what best fits their community, if anything. We do not want to disrupt that area of town, at least I don't. And the last thing, I have the same memo that you all have from Lynn Barrett, and it's certification of the free cash to the point of a little over 19 million. It's my hope that you will put some of that away in the rainy day account to relieve the taxpayers and the residents of this community moving forward, that they don't feel this burden right away from the decommissioning of the power plant. And we do have a little slowness in new growth right now. So if we can get those things fixed or on the right track in the next couple of years, it buys us some time and it helps the taxpayer. So thank you as always, and God bless America's hometown.
Thank you, Richard Quintal. He is chair of the Plymouth Select Board. At this time, Nicole Manfredi will once again serve as assistant town moderator. And now Nicole will provide her opening remarks. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to thank members for your virtual participation once again. Participation and voting procedures remain unchanged, and all new town meeting members have been trained. If at any time you need immediate technical support today, the help desk number is 773-6111. I'll put that in the chat for you. The help desk will be fully manned throughout the day. For immediate questions and concerns, please contact me through the Zoom chat. I will be monitoring this consistently. Once again, I've made arrangements for any town meeting members needing technology support to participate from the library at Plymouth North High School. There's a group of 3 Plymouth North High School students serving as tech buddies. Currently, we have 4 members participating from Plymouth North. For remaining members, if at any time you experience bandwidth issues during town meeting, you may travel to the high school and participate from that location. Again, please be sure to monitor the chat for important information and communication throughout the day. You may communicate with me directly using this feature.
Thank you, Nicole Manfredi. She is assistant town moderator. We also welcome Mark Rich of Coltman and Page, who will serve as town counsel throughout today's session of town meeting. And Attorney Rich joins Nicole and me in the studio. We also would like to recognize Julie Thompson. She is the executive director of PAC TV, and she also joins us in studio as floor director with 2 representatives from OTI Technologies, Mark Feet and Drew Chase. Together, PAC TV and OTI Technologies will be supporting our Zoom webinar and vVoter platforms throughout town meeting. According to our town charter, Chapter 2, Section 5, Subsection 2, the town clerk keeps a record of attendance, and pursuant to the next subsection, a representative town meeting member who cannot attend a session shall provide written notice to the town clerk, and town meeting members have done that. Anyone wishing to inquire as to reasons given for town meeting absence should check with the town clerk. And pursuant to Chapter 2, Section 10, Subsection 2, representative town meeting members shall notify the town clerk in writing prior to the town meeting session as to any articles giving rise to a financial conflict of interest. Town meeting members are also reminded that the vVoter platform includes an option to abstain if needed, in accordance with Section 8A8 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Registered voters residing in the town wishing to participate in a remote town meeting shall submit a written request to the town clerk not less than 48 hours in advance of town meeting. Upon receipt of the request, the clerk shall verify the requesting voter's registration status. Town meeting members, and we have several citizens who have followed that statutory protocol, and they have been provided call-in numbers to be able to speak as needed at town meeting. Now, town meeting members are reminded that we have a live cable audience, and once you've been recognized, you'll be unmuted with speaking privileges. Town meeting members and officials on our panel are encouraged to identify yourselves by name and precinct or title each time you speak, since some members of the cable audience may tune in from time to time. Town meeting members are using the V-Voter platform to request to speak, unless a town meeting member has contacted me in advance to be on a speakers list, and I do have speakers lists on a number of the articles. When you wish to speak, please click on V-Voter and you'll be added to the queue of speakers. The town officials attending by panel may be asked questions through me, and if you are called as a speaker on deck, please be prepared to unmute yourself once your name has been announced. As Nicole Manfredi has mentioned, we are utilizing an electronic V-Voter system, and if you experience a problem when voting, click on V-Voter for a point of order. But if your problem is with V-Voter, please call the help desk and report your point of order to the operator. As she has mentioned, the help desk is available throughout each session of town meeting. And if you have special needs, or if you have a concern for which you do not wish to interrupt the meeting with a point of order, then please call the help desk, and the attendant can then in turn communicate to me through the assistant moderator. We request that when you speak, please silence all sounds where you are located to avoid distraction and interference with your audio and your videos. Town meeting debate is directed through the moderator. All amendments to main motions are to be in writing, and all procedural motions, whenever practicable, are to be submitted in writing in advance. I did receive another motion to amend this morning. We've not had time to provide copies. Town meeting members, I will carefully read it when we come to that motion to amend. But if you wish to accomplish something procedurally during the course of the meeting, do not hesitate to click on your V-Voter application to make a motion or a point of order, and we'll attempt to help you frame an appropriate motion or question that is consistent with either past practice or our parliamentary handbook, which is town meeting time. There are copies in the library, and town meeting time suggests that even if all the rest of the meeting knows the answer, it does not do harm to review and restate a principle from time to time. That's found on page 25, and I will do that throughout this town meeting. Now, if an amendment contains a legal question or has legal ramifications, I may confer with town council, and such motion may be delayed until written and possibly researched. We had this issue come up with a number of proposals for changes in some of the bylaws on the warrant. So we need to take additional time when we're trying to rewrite or redraft legislation. And residents who wish to make a motion may do so through a town meeting member. Debate is encouraged, and if I've been notified in advance that you wish to speak in an article, your name has been added to a list of scheduled speakers, I'll attempt to give everyone an opportunity to speak once before calling on a town meeting member a second time. All speakers during this town meeting by remote participation will be limited each time as a speaker to up to 3 minutes. This time allotment allows question and answer exchanges. Town meeting members are reminded that while the moderator limits the scope of the debate, you limit the length of the debate. And if town meeting wishes to close debate, a member may click on V-Voter and move the question. This motion is to close debate. It is not debatable, and it requires a 2/3 vote. When such a motion is received, we'll display the speaker's queue. As assistant moderator and moderator, Ms. Manfredi and I will be presiding throughout this virtual town meeting. We don't intend to become directly involved in the substantive discussion, but as procedural facilitators to this legislative body, will attempt to be consistent, follow past practice, and follow common sense. And today, again, all your voting will be done electronically. A motion to change the order of the articles requires a 2/3 vote. Late yesterday, I received such a motion. Also, a town meeting member who votes on the prevailing side of a motion may later move to reconsider the motion. And when a vote results in a tie pursuant to the town charter, as moderator, I may break the tie. We'll recess within 2 hours from the start of this meeting as provided in our town charter, and will reconvene following the recess and proceed. So you're reminded that a quorum is presumed, and a town meeting member may question the quorum at any time. The return of the warrant of the fall town meeting shows that it's properly been served. If there are no objections, we'll waive the reading of the constable's return of service of the warrant of the fall town meeting, and further, if there are no objections, we'll waive the reading of the warrant. Today, most of the motions will be from the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee, Kevin Canty, and we welcome Mr. Canty to this session of town meeting. And he moves that all business in all sessions of this fall town meeting be commenced and conducted remotely by means of the Zoom webinar and OTI virtual voting platforms. Mr. Canty, do you care to be heard on your motion?
Morning town meeting. Pursuant to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic that I believe everyone in the entire world is aware of, perhaps with the possible exception of pre-Columbian tribes, this motion is being made in order to facilitate this town meeting, and hopefully we will be able to return to a physical town meeting as soon as possible. I am available for questions, but I assume based on the fact that this is the fourth time we've done this, that I don't need to say much more than that.
Any further discussion on this motion? Yes, we're going to go to Precinct 5, Michael Withington, who has requested through the V-Voter platform to speak on this motion. So we're going to bring in Mr. Withington so that he can address town meeting in the debate on this procedural motion. Welcome, Michael Withington, to Plymouth Town Meeting, coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. We began at 8 a.m., and we're looking and listening for Michael Withington, Precinct 5, who'll be joining us. Mr. Withington? At this town meeting, you have the opportunity for certain written materials. The report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee have been distributed. In addition, you have supplements. Supplement 1, Supplement 2, and also a motions handout. And these documents are also found on the Town of Plymouth website for others who are watching. And we're waiting for Precinct 5, Michael Withington. And I've been told that he took himself off.
Joining as a panelist.
There he is. Michael, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Steve, Mr. Moderator, and to fellow town meeting members, selectmen, and respectfully to all the boards. I wish this was in person, to tell you the truth, and the reason why I do is that we have our school children in session. We also have. I was recently in a jury trial where I was called as a juror, and I had to meet in person. And it is much more salient when you actually have to interact with people. So it is with It is with that justification that I would like to abstain. I don't want to interfere with the town meeting going on, but I think as leaders of the community, we should step in front of the pandemic, being safe at the same point. And respectfully, Mr. Canty, I understand your position, but I am going to abstain on this vote, and so that people understand that as leaders, we should be leading and not keeping our selves in the shadow. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and efforts.
Thank you. That was Michael Withington, Precinct 5. And for those of you that did not have an opportunity to view the town meeting preview, I did announce that the Plymouth Board of Health earlier this fall did invite me to attend one of their meetings, and they questioned me about our town meeting, and following that conversation with them, they voted unanimously to request that town meeting be virtual, and I did adopt that request, which is why this is coming before you today. Further discussion on the procedural motion from Mr. Canty. If not, we're going to go to the vote. This is the first vote of the 2021 Fall Annual Town Meeting. You'll see that there'll be a timer, and it'll show 30 seconds. And once that shows on the screen, we'll then begin the voting. There is the voting showing the screen. Once we can now start voting. And town meeting members are seeing they have three choices. One is a yes, two is a no, three is abstain. And they are voting on the motion for all business in all sessions of this fall town meeting be commenced and conducted remotely by means of the Zoom webinar and OTI virtual voting platforms. Town meeting members have 30 seconds in which to complete the voting. The clock is going down. We've completed the voting. We now provide the public and town meeting with an opportunity to view the votes. 83 voted in favor, no 21, 6 abstaining. The motion carries. We will continue with remote participation under the statute, and we're now going to show the precincts and how they voted. We're going to go through all 15 precincts, 3 at a time. Town meeting members, please check your votes each time to make sure they are correctly recorded. First showing precincts 4, 5, and 6. For those of you watching on PAC TV, the green is a yes, and the red is a no, and the yellow are abstentions. We're at 7, 8, and 9, showing the precincts 10, 11, and 12. And we continue on with the precincts 13, 14, and 15. We have over 100 town meeting members voting. Our quorum is 90. And we're showing the precincts and now 1, 2, and 3. And there are all the precincts. As we move on to the second procedural motion, Mr. Canty moves that an adjourned session of this town meeting be held remotely on October 18 at 6 p.m. Mr. Canty.
I think this motion speaks for itself.
Thank you. I don't see any speakers in the queue. We'll go right to the vote. Town meeting members have another opportunity to vote and get used to voting with this procedural motion. A yes is 1, a no is 2, 3 abstain. It's for the adjourned session to be held on Monday at 6. The 30 is showing on the screen. When we start to count down, you can vote now. Town meeting members are voting. This is coming to you live from PAC TV on Saturday, October 16. We begin at 8 a.m. We are in the first morning session. Town meeting members have completed the opening ceremonies. We're on our second of 3 procedural motions. Town meeting members have 30 seconds in which to vote. We're counting down the time, and voting is now completed on the second procedural motion. Let's see how they voted. 1, 2 in favor, 12 no, 3 abstentions. It carries. We're now going to see the precincts. And you'll begin with 4, 5, and 6. You'll see that we have 117 town meeting members who are voting, which is, again, a very large number of town meeting members participating in this remote participation. Precincts 7, 8, and 9, we're doing very well with attendance and very well with the voting. Precincts 10, 11, and 12, town meeting members have been getting experience in doing this. This is their 4th time meeting remotely with the vVoter platform and the Zoom webinar. Precincts 13, 14, and 15, again, For those of you who joined us, a green is a yes, red is a no, and yellow is an abstention. And finally, precincts 1, 2, and 3, and this motion passes. We now have a third procedural motion, which I received late yesterday, and this is a motion from William Cohen, and he moves to change the order of Article 29 to be before Article 1. It requires a 2/3 vote. We're going to bring in town meeting member William Cohen, Precinct 3, who will speak to his motion to change the order of the articles. Town meeting members are reminded, and the public is reminded, that at any time, town meeting can vote to change the order of the articles of debate. You can also move to reconsider by making a motion if you voted on the prevailing side. Mr. Cohen is taking advantage of this procedural parliamentary procedure. He's asking town meeting to consider. Welcome, Bill Cohen.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Chairman, Finance Committee. First, I want to apologize for my late procedural motion to move 29 to the beginning of the town meeting. And it's really has a lot to do with our responsibilities as town meeting members, the priorities of our activities. We have to come into a session to look at budgetary needs of the town. One of our main responsibilities is financial, but we have this other awesome responsibility, and that is the controlling of the zoning bylaw that controls the town of Plymouth, what the future of Plymouth is going to look like, and what the cost is going to incur by the municipality with the decisions we use and how we use our land. And I just believe that people's minds and attention should be fresh. We shouldn't move such an important article to the end of the afternoon. We should have it up front so people have a chance to focus and take their time on such an important concept as changing zoning bylaws. I've served on the zoning bylaw. I've served on your zoning committee now for nearly 15 years. And the one thing I have learned in that capacity is we need to be very careful when we make these decisions. And I think it's important that at town meeting, we have our full attention and energy levels. Thank you very much.
I lost this, but I think we have Precinct 7, Nathan Siegel. I'm not sure if he still wishes to be heard. I saw it on the V-Voter, but it has now been removed. So I'm going to go on. Are there any other people who wish to be heard on this motion to change the order of Article 29 to be before Article 1? If not, we're going to go to the V-Voter. Town meeting members are now going to take a third procedural vote at the start of town meeting. This is a 2/3 vote of town meeting members if we move this article. We're looking for it to come up on our screen. Again, a yes is 1, a no is 2, abstention is 3. We're looking at the count on the screen for the 30 seconds. And once we see that, we'll know that we'll be close to starting the vote. As it ticks down, we can begin voting now. Town meeting members are now voting on a procedural motion for Article 29. All of the articles in the warrant have been provided to town meeting members. They are available on the town website. I will not be reading the articles into the record. I will be reading the motions into the record. And at this time, we're continuing on with the vote to change the article. And we've completed the voting, and now we'll have the votes. 88 voting in favor, 30 in opposition, 2 abstentions. The motion carries by 2/3, and we will now be going to Article 29. You'll see we're scrolling through the various precincts so that you can see how town meeting members voted. And as you look at that, we're going to be going to the motion. I'll read the main motion, and then I also have a motion to amend. The main motion is a 2/3 vote. A motion to amend is a majority vote. We're continuing to see the precincts. We're at 13, 14, and 15. We will then go to 1, 2, and 3. But meanwhile, Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend its zoning bylaw, section 201.3, definitions, and to create a new section entitled Accessory Dwelling Units in accordance with the final report and recommendation, the final report of the Planning Board on the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw as it relates to accessory dwelling units in all residential and mixed-use zoning districts. Again, a 2/3 vote on the main motion. Mr. Canty, on your main motion.
In a unanimous vote of 12-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 29. Approval of this article will amend the zoning bylaw to allow accessory dwelling units by special permit. This is intended to increase the number of moderately priced long-term rental units in the town and to allow residents on fixed incomes who wish to remain in their homes to supplement their income through the rental of just such a unit.
We're now going to bring in Dennis Bagley. Dennis is a town meeting member, and he has presented a motion to amend. He's at Precinct 15. I'm going to read the motion to amend, and then we'll hear from Mr. Bagley. Mr. Bagley moves to amend the proposed bylaw wording as follows. Under 203-17 accessory dwelling units, in the subsection entitled Use and Dimensional Requirements, change bullet number 5 to now say 5. The ADU shall not exceed 700 gross square feet in size or 25% of the GFA of the single family residence to which it is accessory, whichever is less. I would like to tell town meeting members, in an effort to be fully transparent, we do endeavor to get you copies of motions in advance if we receive them in advance. Due to the late submission of this motion, I did ask Mr. Bagley to email everyone, and hopefully you received his email, which has the text of this motion. Dennis Bagley, do you care to be heard on your motion?
Yes, please.
Go
Good morning. Good morning, town meeting. I apologize also for the late submittal of this. It did come up in our caucus meeting the other night, and so we wanted to move forward with this. But first, I want to thank everybody that put together this bylaw. I feel personally it's long overdue, and the hard work of the planning board and Mr. Hartman and everyone else that's involved. I appreciate the effort, and I will be supporting this no matter how this particular motion to amend turns out. My point is the intent that's written up in the actual bylaw that's being submitted. The intents are good ones, and they're legitimate ones. And if the last year and a half has shown us anything, the time of the nuclear family might be coming to an end. We need to allow extended families to live in Plymouth and elsewhere. We need to make it easier for them to do that, to stay in their homes as the costs of things rise, real estate, et cetera. We need to be able to handle people at all ends of their life spectrum, their life cycle, whether they're just coming out of college and they find themselves in debt and they need to have more affordable housing, or they're retired, own their house, and the only way they continue to stay in their house is by finding an alternative source of income. So I'm in complete agreement with this bylaw as it stands, and I've done a lot of research in other towns. The only thing I had was 500 square feet. That includes the bathroom, the kitchen, the living area, the bedroom. That's pretty tight. That's pretty small. If you start looking around, you realize that that is very small space. The average suite, hotel suite in Massachusetts is between 600 and 800 square feet. So this would be smaller than a stay in an average hotel room from size perspective. I mean, think about how tight you'd be squeezing your grandparents or children into these tight spaces. It's almost you're guaranteeing that nobody's going to submit for the permit to actually use these ADUs. It's almost setting the effort, which is a great effort, up for failure right from the beginning. So that's really all I had to say. My motion to amend simply changes from 500 square feet to 700. And I hope you'll support this motion.
Thank you. And that is Precinct 15 Town Meeting Member Dennis Bagley. In the chat, some town meeting members have asked how we will consider the motions. When we have motions to amend, they will be taken up before the vote on the main motion. So when we have a motion to close debate under this article, for example, if it happens, that would be initially to close debate on Mr. Bagley's motion to amend. And then we would continue to debate the main motion as amended or not until such time as we have a motion to close debate. Brigida Keene is with us on the panel. She is the vice chair of the planning board, and she and Lee Hartman, director of planning development, are available to answer questions of town meeting. And I have people who have requested in advance that they be recognized to speak. So first, we're going to go to Precinct 12, Betsy Hall, followed by Precinct 3, Bill Cohen. We are debating Article 29, and we are considering both the main motion as well as the motion to amend. We welcome Betsy Hall this morning to this first session of Plymouth Town Meeting, and it's coming to you live on October 16, 2021. We began at 8 a.m. and we are now on Article 29 due to the motion to change the order. Good morning, Betsy.
Good morning. Good morning to all my fellow town meeting members, and I appreciate the effort that has gone into creating this bylaw. And I am for this bylaw if it is rewritten. We have received at least 50 emails from Plymouth residents concerning the Brook Road Bridge. And that's wonderful. People are extremely vocal and passionate about their desire to save this bridge. However, I have not received any email that I ever remember about the town's desire to protect our aquifer. This bylaw will affect our aquifer. According to Lee Hartman, at least 85% of all of the homes in Plymouth are on septic systems. And so that could be as many as 50,000 or more people are eliminating their waste of all kinds into our drinking water. This includes our toilets, our dishwashers, our washing machines, everything we put on lawns or medicines that we take. They're all going into our drinking water. And I think sometimes it's easier to not think about the fact that when we flush our toilet, it's going into our drinking water. But as the ocean could be polluted, so could our aquifer. And so I feel as though this particular article is not ready to be voted on. I'm hoping that all town meeting members will vote no on this article and send the article back to the planning board for a rewrite. I did look at the ADU bylaws of at least 15 towns from Lexington down to Orleans, and most of the bylaws are much more detailed than this ADU bylaw. And one of the things in particular, I did send the moderator a number of amendments that I wanted to bring to town meeting today, and they were disallowed. I was late getting them to him. I didn't get them till Wednesday, and it's a zoning change, so I understand his decision. However, I feel as though I don't want to increase the square footage. And in fact, I'm hoping that people will vote against this amendment and that they will also vote against the main amendment in order to look more seriously at how can we protect our aquifer? How can we, and one of my amendments, by the way, was to limit ADUs to public septic waste elimination so that we would use our sewers. Our ADUs would only go in towns, in homes, I'm sorry, that have public sewer facilities, so that we're not adding more people to our single family homes. Now, also that would include places that have their own, I know that we have communities such as Pine Hills who have their own septic situation. But as far as all the single family homes in Plymouth, it's my hope that we will not be adding more people to those homes through this bylaw.
Thank you. And that was Betsy Hall speaking on Article 29. We're continuing to debate both the motion to amend as well as the main motion. We're going to bring back in William Cohen, Precinct 3, and he'll be followed by Precinct 12, William Abbott. We welcome back Mr. Cohen, who wishes to speak on this particular article. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Cohen. I just had a question for planning staff and the planning board. Were they going to make a presentation before the debate? Was there any presentation of their article planned?
I believe they were going to be available to answer questions, but I'll go to Brigitte Keene. She is vice chair of the planning board. And Brigitte, in view of what you've heard so far this morning, is there anything else you'd like to add or present before we go to other speakers? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. What I'd like to say is that there was a preview night and a presentation night, and the planning board did present a presentation there. I'm hopeful that town meeting members had the opportunity to view it. It was comprehensive, and I don't believe that we need to present further from the planning board perspective, except to say that the public meeting was so overwhelmingly in favor of this article that the planning board did vote unanimously to move it forward. And with that, I'd also like to ask Mr. Hartman if he has any preliminary presentation, because I do not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brigitte Keene is the vice chair of the Plymouth Planning Board. I'll come back to Mr. Hartman because I have a number of town meeting members who have requested to be heard. We're going to begin with Precinct 12.
Mr. Moderator, I did.
Mr. Cohen, do you have further questions?
Mr. Moderator, I did want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I did. I did have a couple of comments. If we're not going to hear a presentation, I just wanted to make my comments, and maybe the chairwoman and Mr. Hartman can answer the questions. The concern that I have, again, as I indicated before, I've served on your zoning board now for nearly 15 years. You've seen this article, I believe 2 years ago it came before you. The town meeting voted it down. And one of the reservations that we had was the effects that this might have across the town of Plymouth. That's why we have zoning. We have area zoned for single family, for mixed use. And my concern lies in this, that when you go to an area that was built out as single family, and you create another unit in another house, and you are there in the neighborhood, I can tell you from the other side of my equation, I work as a realtor. When I'm in a neighborhood and I'm selling a house and it's a single family house in a single family neighborhood, and someone looks next door and they sees a level of attention at that property that warrants, is that a two family, or is there more than one family living in that house? And when that is the case, real estate values show this, that the single family house next to a house being used at a higher level of density around the question of units will encroach on that single family home's value over a period of time in terms of its production. So I have reservations about the real estate performance of the single family next to the house that has been intensified in a neighborhood that was built out originally as single family. When someone buys a home, they should expect that that zoning is consistent over a period of time, and their performance of real estate is performing so that when they retire, they have that investment that they can go to sell and expect it to perform as well as it could have. The other concern that I have is that when you intensify the use of a property, you're bringing in a higher level service to the community. You are increasing the population of Plymouth, and the town has one unit to assess. So with the increased population, you drive the cost of services to a community. So the town of Plymouth, as its population grows, it has to meet those responsibilities. Town meeting is faced with having to deal with the impact of traffic and fire and police and infrastructure improvements, because as people start to use their property at a more tense level with a higher population, that's a result. And that being the case, we recognize that that can be problematic. The other thing is that I think that I am not opposed to ADUs. I'm opposed to a sweeping zoning change across the town of Plymouth. What I prefer is that this article is voted down again, sent back to the planning level where they can start to look at overlay districts. Because some places in Plymouth, this would work great. In some places in Plymouth, it would intensify the situation in tight quarters in a part of town, in a neighborhood, that it would encroach on the quiet enjoyment of your neighbors. So I would ask people to think about those concerns. I think that this is a good idea. We're going in the right direction, but we have to specifically look at Plymouth. It's a very big town. It's 22 miles long and 15 miles wide, and to do a sweeping zoning change would be problematic. The other thing we have to keep an eye on is that enforcement of activities such as this nature lie in the hands of the inspectional services. And the only way that they're alerted to these problems in a neighborhood is if the neighbor brings a concern to inspectional services. And in the capacity on the zoning board over the years, I've often heard the concern from inspectional services that they have very few staff to go out and enforce how many square feet, how many people are living there. And I can tell you, again, as a real estate agent, you can see the other day I was trying to rent a 1-bedroom unit. And I think during the showing, over 75% of the people were more than 2 people looking to rent the unit.
Requested speaking privileges. We're going to begin with Precinct 12, Lawrence Delafield, and on deck, Precinct 2, Michael Leary.
Your audio sums off. Hold on. Hold on. Your audio's out.
We're waiting again. This is a Plymouth Town Meeting. We're having a voice check here at Town Meeting. And are we able to hear now in the studio?
Can't even hear him.
They're doing a voice check here.
Okay. I'm gonna switch him to another mic.
And we're doing a voice check here in Town Meeting, here in the studio. And we're now going to proceed. We have a number of Town Meeting members who have asked to be recognized. We're going to begin with Precinct 12, Lawrence Delafield, followed by Michael Leary, Precinct 2. I'd like to welcome Lawrence Delafield to this morning's session of Town Meeting. Town Meeting members are able to use the V-Voter platform to request the opportunity to be heard. And we're bringing in Mr. Delafield. I see him on the screen. He's currently muted. Mr. Delafield, if you can unmute yourself. And you're joining us for your comments on Article 29. Good morning, Pompey.
Good morning. This is Pompey Delafield, Precinct 12. Just a question. I'm not sure I have an answer, but it's a question. My concern on this is that any change allowing for this type of unit would be permanent. It's all very fine and it's wonderful to say we're doing it because of extended families or not, but what it really does is create a permanent 2-family residence out of every single home, a potential for that in Plymouth. I think it needs to have more research done on that and how we can control that so that the purpose is there without turning single-family housing into 2-family housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, we're going to go to Precinct 12, William Abbott. He had emailed me earlier for a speaker's list. So William Abbott, followed by Michael Leary, Precinct 2. This is Article 29 of the first session. And we're going to bring in Mr. Abbott to speak on Article 29. This is coming to you live this morning. Mr. Abbott is coming in. We're bringing him in. Good morning, Mr. Abbott.
Good morning, Steve.
Go ahead.
Nice.
We have
Okay.
you.
I'm all in favor of smart housing, but I'm not sure this is the best way to go about it, to allow ADUs. I'm concerned that just allowing them to go scattershot all over the town, anywhere and everywhere, is not the way to do it. I think the idea of doing this through an overlay zone So we study closely exactly where these ADUs should go and where they shouldn't go, and then create the zone to allow the ADUs where they can go and should go. There are areas where we don't want to see them. For example, on small, narrow ways where there would be increased traffic, and roadways that can't accommodate further density. You know, I live on one of these little roadways along pond shores that can't take increased septic load without causing the ponds to degrade further. They should go near village centers, near transportation stops, major streets, which can accommodate the traffic, and not just any remote location in Plymouth. I mean, what about the Pine Hills and Red Brook? There are 4,500 dwellings there when they're get close to build out. They're all going to get a chance to add a couple of more persons per unit. The special permit is too blunt an instrument to properly cite an ADU. I mean, an example is on a narrow street. Suppose House A gets a special permit because there's no other traffic on the street other than the 5 families that live on that street. So they get a special permit for an ADU where a stranger could go, or a family member, whatever, it could be anybody. And then the house across the street sees what's going on over in House A, and they'd like a special permit. So they come in and they ask for it, and now we've got more traffic. I mean, if the first guy got a special permit, certainly the second one is entitled to one as well. I mean, I don't think the special permit is the way to do it. The same thing would happen along a pond shore. Let's look at an overlay zone. The other towns have done it through an overlay zone. They can be easily revised from time to time. They can be expanded, contracted to make the ADUs go where they belong and not where they should go. Thank you.
To Michael Leary, followed by Precinct 11, Christopher Merrill. We'd like to welcome all of town meeting members to this first session of Plymouth Fall Town Meeting. We have a screen here where we bring in the town meeting members to speak. At this time, Precinct 2, Michael Leary, has requested an opportunity. I see him coming in on our screen here. We're bringing him in as a speaker. And this is Precinct 2, Michael Leary, followed by Precinct 11, Christopher Merrill. And there's Michael. Good morning, Michael.
Yes, good morning. So, yeah, I'd like to just speak briefly on it, but, you know, one of the things that's been mentioned is the justification, you know, as far as making it so the elderly can stay in their house. The problem I see with that is this doesn't open it up to a lot of the zoning they claim it does. I mean, Title V regulations limit you to, if you have a well and a septic system on a lot, limit you to the number of bedrooms has to have 10,000 square feet. So in the R25 zone, which they got listed for 60% of the people, it isn't going to make a difference because you're only allowed 2 bedrooms. So it doesn't open it up quite as much there. R40, even if you have you're in R40, there is enough space, and in rural residential too. However, most people have septic systems that are in for 3 bedroom. Again, now you have to go to the expense of not only the $35,000 to put one of these up, but you also have to go the expense of upgrading septic system. This also opens it up for builders on subdevelopments. They could come to the ZBA and actually get a permit to put them up. So they could be putting these things up with these in place. I side with Mr. Abbott. I definitely think we do have in the downtown district, we do have an overlay district that allows 2 principal uses on one piece of property. This would increase the principal uses everywhere. You'd be able to have 2 principal uses. I'm not in favor of that. It adds to the density. You know, residential is our most costly thing in town. We don't have enough commercial to overset it is. The other thing is, you know, they've got to come up to building code. So even if one of these elderly people wants to do this, or a person, you know, you put on the unit or you have a garage out there, you want to change to it, you're gonna be spending $35,000 upgrading it just so you can do these. So I don't see how this helps that particular comment, but I'm not, and the other thing too is once you put the costs in there, we're all concerned with the cost of affordables. I mean, what's considered affordable, I don't think even really is that affordable, but again, is when they put this up and you put all the money into it, if you were gonna rent it out, it's gonna have to rent for the same amount of money, because you're not gonna be able to do it for less than $125 a square foot. Yeah, the intended consequences would be it could change precinct, could change the density for voting. Also, school and fire densities are set on that. I said it does have too many things that changes. I don't think we're gonna get the bang for the buck. I agree with Mr. Abbott. It should be in overlay districts. That's a better way of doing things like this. And for that reason, I'm voting no on it.
We're going to continue now with Precinct 11, Christopher Lewis. Christopher Merrill, I'm sorry, Christopher Lewis Merrill, followed by Mark Pulcinelli in Precinct 1. And there's Chris Merrill. Welcome, Chris.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator. I have two questions, if I may.
Yes.
Is there any consideration to make this ADA compliant?
All right. Responding to the first question, we'll go to Lee Hartman, Director of Planning and Development, since we haven't heard from him. Let's bring in Mr. Hartman to answer Mr. Merrill's question. Lee Hartman, good morning.
Thank you. Lee Hartman, Director of Planning and Development for the town of Plymouth. I would have to defer that question to the building commissioner. I don't believe there's anything right off the top that would make it ADA compliant as just a single unit. I think it's something that you could choose to do, but I don't think it would be, well, I don't think it would be required.
Being
Okay,
told,
thank you. And then a
unfortunately,
follow-up, if I may.
Go ahead, Christopher Merrill. Go ahead.
In terms of, thank you. In terms of ownership change, if a seller is, or the current property owner is granted the ADU, and then they decide to sell the property at a later time, does the new owner then have to refile for special permit for the ADU, or does it always stay as an ADU?
Mr. Hartman responding.
The permit and the ADU runs with the land. So if you get an ADU and you sell the property, it would stay with the land. And if I could, just a couple other comments while I'm on. We already have something called an in-law apartment, a family suite that's already in the town. So as we talk about our concern that there's going to be an issue all over the community with this type of thing popping up, they're already here. The family suite, it's 1,200 units, so it's significantly less than either the 500 or 700 we're debating now. The only difference between a family suite that we already have now is it's allowed by right, not by special permit, and that it has to have a shared entrance. It can't have a separate entrance, and it has to be attached. It can't be detached. But again, this type of development is already all over this community and something that occurs already. And I see Nick Mayo on, and maybe he can respond to the ADA issue. Thank you.
Yeah, being told by town council it's not an issue for the building commissioner. So I have Chris, do you have any other questions? Mr. Merrill? No. All right. I have a number of
no follow-up.
Thank you. I have a number of procedural motions I have to recognize. I'm going to begin with Precinct 5, Michael Withington, who has a point of order, followed by Precinct 5, Patricia McCarthy, who moves to close debate. And her motion would be to close debate on Mr. Bagley's motion to amend. But first, we're going to bring back in Precinct 5, Michael Withington, who has a point of order. This is Plymouth Fall Town Meeting. It's the first session. Mr. Withington, welcome back.
Thank you for recognizing me, Steve. It's my understanding we're debating the change in the motion, correct?
We are debating the main motion and the motion to amend, and you have Mr. Bagley's motion to amend, which was to change number 5. I'll read it when we take the vote.
So my question is, are we don't we have to have the motion to amend and have that voted up and down and then vote for the main motion, correct?
That is correct. Right now, I have a motion to close debate from Patricia McCarthy, and if that passes successfully, we'll vote on the motion to amend. And following that,
And
we
there's
would then go back
discussion
to the
to-
main motion as amended or not. Any other question?
Yes, my question is, are we debating the main motion right now? Or are we
I
debating
said
the
that at
motion
the
to amend?
outset that I would put the main motion and the motion to amend into the record so that town meeting members could choose whether or not they wanted to speak to the motion to amend or the main motion. I now have a motion to close debate. I'm going to take that up next. Okay, any other questions on procedure?
Just your closing debate on both the motions or the main motion?
No, I am not closing debate. I am entertaining a motion to close debate. That motion is being brought by Patricia McCarthy, and it is on the motion to amend, which I said at the outset that would be the first motion we would consider to close debate.
Thank you. I misunderstood. I just wanted
Thank you.
clarity.
All right, and so now we have her motion to close debate. It is not debatable. I would show the queue or tell you that currently we have 4 town meeting members who have asked to speak on the motion. Precinct 1, Mark Pulcinelli. Precinct 15, Dennis Bagley. Precinct 4, David Peck. Precinct 9, Victor Hansen. And Precinct 8, Therese Brennan. We're now going to take a vote as to whether to close debate on Mr. Bagley's motion to amend. And again, his motion to amend was that the ADU not exceed 700 gross square feet in size or 25% of the GFA of the single-family residence to which is necessary, whichever is less. That is what we are now voting on, whether to close debate. A yes, a no, or abstention. You'll have 30 seconds in which to vote whether to close debate. You can vote now. Town meeting members are voting on a procedural motion. This is not a substantive motion. They are voting on whether to close debate on the motion to amend under Article 29. The motion to amend was presented by Dennis Bagley. They have 30 seconds in which to vote on whether or not to close debate on the motion to amend. And the voting has now been completed, and the vote is 78 yes, 42 no, 0 abstentions. The motion does not carry. We'll scroll through the precincts, but while we do that, and you get to see how town meeting members voted, we're going to continue with the debate. And again, we're going to be going to Precinct 1, Mark Pulcinelli, and will be followed by Precinct 4, David Peck. We're scrolling through the precincts, and you'll see 10, 11, and 12 are now being shown. Again, 78 voted in favor, 42 in opposition, 0 abstentions, and finally 13, 14, and 15. We're showing all the precincts. We're going to continue. Again, we're debating both the motion to amend and the main motion. We're going to bring in Precinct 1, Mark Pulcinelli. We've seen all the precincts. We'd like to welcome Mr. Pulcinelli to this first session of town meeting, and I see him. Good morning, Mr. Pulcinelli.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. On this motion, I'd just like to say that I believe while there's a lot of things we will need to do in order to make housing more affordable for both our elderly and younger people in town, I believe that this motion is a step in the right direction, and I'd encourage people to support it. And then I also just had a question regarding the motion to amend. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I was hoping Brigida may speak to how she arrived at the original 500 square foot number and how she feels about this motion to amend it to 700 square.
Thank you. Question to Brigida Keene. She's the vice chair of the Plymouth Planning Board, and we're going to bring her back in. Welcome back, Brigida. Responding.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator and Mr. Pulcinelli. As far as the 500 square feet, that was a carryover from the 2019. And at that time, I was not involved in, well, I was the alternate on the planning board. So I have to defer that question to Mr. Hartman. But I think that the 700 square feet is because the Housing Choice Act defines an ADU as 900 square feet. And we have 500 square feet. And I'm not trying to attribute anything to Mr. Begley's thought process, but I think that he felt that 700 square feet would make for a much more comfortable and doable unit for the homeowner and the occupant. So with that, Mr. Hartman, if you could.
Lee
Thank
Hartman
you.
is Director of Planning
So-
Development, further responding.
Thank you. So the 500, again, as you can see with the debate today, there's a lot of concern, a lot of issues. So we took a very conservative approach and took a very small unit. So the 500 is really something to say, incrementally, let's do something small that won't have a big impact on the community. If it's something that works, we could always look at making it a slightly larger unit. But at this point, we tried to, through the special permit and through the size, to limit the potential and any potential impacts too. So again, we just took a very conservative approach to try to get the vote of town meeting. Whether it's 500 or 700, there's no magic to it. It's what the community feels comfortable with.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Mr. Pulcinelli. Any other comments?
Yeah, further, I'd just like to say, you know, I hear the concerns of other town meeting members. I did view the public hearing on this, and I do believe that the special permit process is sufficient to mitigate any concerns this may have to abutters or homeowners. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was Mark Pulcinelli. We're now going to go to Precinct 4, David Peck. He'll be followed by Precinct 9, Victor Hansen. We have two other people in the queue. And while we're bringing them in, Stacy Dela Cruz voted no on the last motion, as did Richard Neely. They're checking their vote, but at this time, we're first going to see David Peck, Precinct 4, speaking on either the motion to amend or the main motion. David Peck is being brought in as a speaker, and this is Plymouth Town Meeting is coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. We're beginning with Article 29. We have a motion to amend. Precinct 4, David Peck has requested speaking privileges, and he'll be followed by Precinct 9, Victor Hansen. Town meeting members are using the Zoom webinar as well as the vVoter platform with OTI Technologies. We've had a number of procedural votes this morning with town meeting members, and we see David Peck coming in. Welcome, David Peck, to Plymouth Town Meeting. I can see you on the screen with your name, and I see your audio is off. Not seeing your video, but if you can speak, go ahead.
Let's see. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator and fellow town meeting members. Just a few comments. I was one of the original supporters 2 years ago. Town meeting debate and the vote got very close, and the primary concern at that point was involving abutters and really respecting the neighborhoods. And so this rewrite is adding the special permit process. So this gets scrutiny from all of the abutters, the chance to say yay or nay, and then going through planning and zoning. We also added a lot of guardrails or safeguards. There's been concern about density, about parking spreading out into the street. We've heard from Betsy legitimate concerns about the aquifer. This draft bylaw has guidelines, that Board of Health needs to sign off. So any unit in an existing home, if it's adding a bedroom, you'd need to upgrade the septic system. Barnstable just passed this a very similar bylaw, and their bylaw says that if you basically live within the bedrooms you have, that you cannot add a bedroom. You just substitute a bedroom. That goes right to the Board of Health approvals. Inspectional services and safety and fire department review that there's proper egresses is important. Parking, we have, a very strong parking bylaw that all parking has to be off-street. So I'm in support. Like Mr. Hartman just said, we kept this small to minimize the impact on a neighborhood, the 500 square feet or smaller. This is a studio apartment or a very tiny one bedroom. This is not creating tenements or dramatically increasing density. This has been a local and national trend to create ADU opportunities in communities. In Massachusetts alone, 10 towns on the Cape, all have passed ADUs, Barnstable most recently. We've read about Lexington, and Lincoln. It's been in the Globe, it's been in the Parade magazine. The AARP has been pushing this with multiple publications. It adds an option, an affordability option for starting out families and small, a new couple, a new police or fire or teacher, one, and allows the seniors to stay in their own home. It is something that is needed in Plymouth. I respect my neighbors with some of their concerns about how it's laid out, but we have guardrails on it with Board of Health, inspectional services, and our parking zoning. And I would point out, as Mr. Hartman just pointed out, the family units, the in-law apartments are much bigger and don't have the same safeguards. So this really is thoughtfully put together with lots of safeguards for the community. Thank you.
Mr. Peck, your video did not come through. You can call the help desk to help you for the future. At this time, we're going to go to Precinct 9, Victor Hansen, followed by Precinct 8, Therese Brennan. We have 3 other people in the queue. Some town meeting members have been asking about parliamentary procedures or motions in the chat. And a reminder, you need to use the V-Voter platform if you wish to make a motion or a point of order or close debate. Precinct 9, Victor Hansen, welcome.
Hi, good morning. I wanted to echo some of the sentiments that Bill Cohane mentioned and some other people have mentioned that I think bears repeating. We have concerns about our aquifer. We have concerns about people's potential property value, which may seem like a trivial thing when you're talking about giving someone the opportunity to stay in their home or have an affordable place to live. But you do have to respect someone that came into a neighborhood, saw it for what it was, made a purchase and devoted their life, because a mortgage is a life, into something, just to have at some point everything change, possibly because of a sweeping bylaw change in a town. I agree, this is a good step in the right direction as an idea. I'm behind the ADUs, but I don't think you change a bylaw as a step in the right direction. I think we should make a solid plan, cover all the bases, all the long-term ramifications, the potential can of worms this could potentially open up to be, and then run in this direction. As opposed to, if we have any ramifications, I hear some of the things people say about there's different parts of the town that would work better and worse in. Why don't we just make absolutely sure before we do that? And I feel like this gets pushed as poor Mary Frances is going to get thrown out of her home if we don't pass this. But what else are we doing in the meantime? So I'm going to vote no this fall, and I would like to see you vote no as well, and just come back with a more perfect plan before this gets opened up, a can of worms that we can't put back. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're now going to go to a procedural motion to close debate. Precinct 15, Kevin Joyce moves to close debate. This would be to close debate on Mr. Begley's motion to amend. It is not debatable. I can tell you that in the queue, I'm seeing that we have Ms. Brennan, Ms. Davis, Mr. Cohen, Mr. Babini, and Mr. Thomas Begley, who have asked to speak. So this is not debatable. We're going to move to the motion to close debate on the motion to amend from Dennis Begley. We're going to look for that. We see the vote is showing now 2 town meeting members, and the seconds are shown on the screen. Town meeting members will vote when the clock now ticks. So town meeting members can now vote on the motion to close debate on the motion to amend. This is a 2/3 vote. It is a procedural vote. It is not a substantive vote. Town meeting members are voting whether to continue to debate the motion to amend presented by Mr. Bagley, which was that the ADU not exceed 700 gross square feet. We are voting on that. The voting has been completed on that. 88 voted in favor, 37 no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. We are now going to vote on Mr. Bagley's motion to amend. Town meeting members, once you have scrolled through on the motion to close debate, we will next be taking a substantive motion. But on that procedural motion, town meeting members can see if their vote was properly recorded. We're at precincts 7, 8, and 9 on that motion to close debate, which did pass by 2/3, 10, 11, and 12, and 13, 14, and 15. Again, the precincts are showing that by 2/3, they did vote to close debate 1, 2, and 3. We've now shown them all, so now we're going to give town meeting members an opportunity to vote on Mr. Dennis Bagley's motion to amend the main motion. So this is the vote that town meeting members will now be taking. This is a majority vote on the motion to amend. You'll see a 1 is a yes, a 2 is a no, a 3 abstention. There are 30 seconds showing on the screen. Town meeting members voting now. You are voting on Mr. Bagley's motion to amend. It is that the ADU shall not exceed 700 gross square feet in size, or 25% of the GFA of the single-family residence to which it is accessory, whichever is less. You're voting on this motion to amend. It is a majority vote on a motion to amend, and the voting by town meeting is now completed, and town meeting members are going to show their vote, and the votes are 62 in favor, 61 no, 2 abstentions. It carries by 1 vote. Your votes count, and we now have a new main motion as amended, and I'm looking back on my screen because previously we had people who wanted to speak. I believe they were cleared, and so people will need to let me know if they still wish to be heard. So click your V voter. There were about 4 or 5 people who had wanted to be heard. We now have a new main motion as amended, and it is amended for the 700 gross square feet rather than the 500 gross square feet. And unless a town meeting member comes in, I am seeing Nancy Davis, Precinct 2, followed by Therese Brennan, Precinct 8. So we're going to go to Nancy Davis, and we're going to welcome Nancy to Plymouth Town Meeting. And this is Plymouth Town Meeting coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. Nancy Davis is a town meeting member in Precinct 2, and town meeting is debating Article 29. And we have now a main motion which has been amended, and town meeting members continue to debate the main motion as amended until I have a motion to close debate. And I see Nancy Davis on the screen. Nancy, unmute yourself. I'm not seeing your video, but if you unmute yourself, you can begin speaking. And this is Precinct 2, Nancy Davis on the article before us. Nancy, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you are. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. How is everybody?
Go ahead, Nancy.
I just wanted to say that in terms of, let me get my notes here, so just make this quick. Prior to World War II, extended families were staying together, and this was a very popular thing having the ADUs, and then after the war, there were the subdivisions and people went off on their way. As we move forward, real estate prices are getting out of control. I've noticed in our own town, permits are flying out to build condos that block our views downtown, popping up like lawn clovers, which is somewhat disappointing. The financial outlook for a lot of people, it prices them out of the market to buy a home. A lot of young people could not fathom being able to, buy a home ever. And there's also a rising elderly population. This gives an opportunity for children to take care of their elders. And I think overall that we're looking at this pretty bleak. If you think about just our jail in this town, there's raw sewage that gets leaked, the breakage over on Westerly that was like highly dysfunctional, and all the other disgusting things that happen due to, pollution of our aquifer from the jail. I think that the other thing is it's zoned, so people are going to be checked out. They're going to have to extend their sewer if they, do this. I would have to add one to my house, but I think this is a wonderful opportunity. For someone like myself, I could live in that smaller area and rent my whole home for $2,200 and pay off my mortgage in 15 years and, get out of debt and things like that. So I think it's marvelous. And it also is, I don't know, I think if you rent to anybody, you're taking a risk, but I think people are looking at this like it's going to add negative things to a neighborhood, and I couldn't disagree more.
Thank you, Nancy Davis.
Thank
And
you.
Nancy, you can call the help desk to help you with your video. We could not see you, but we could hear you clearly. Thank you. We have a couple of procedural motions. We're going to go to them next before we go back to any speakers. The first procedural motion, Precinct 12, Betsy Hall on a point of order, followed by Precinct 11, Francis O'Brien, motion to close debate. First to Betsy Hall, Precinct 12, on your point of order. We are currently debating Article 29. We have a main motion now as amended. And welcome back to town meeting, Betsy Hall.
Yes, Steve, it says in the chat room, someone by the name of Nicole said that she voted no on the amendment and that it did not show up. So I'm asking to have a recheck on the vote on the amendment because that's what it says, in the chat.
Yeah. So again, Betsy, I'm going to let you know that it was not Nicole, it was Stacy Dela Cruz who voted no.
Oh, I see.
And
It's been recorded.
And it's
They've
been
got it.
recorded. So does that bring it to a tie?
Well, this was a vote, the previous vote. This is not the most
not
recent
the motion
vote.
to close
No.
debate. No. Okay. And not the motion.
Oh, okay.
And not right. It was on the motion to close debate. It was not on the amendment. Okay, Betsy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
I just wanted to be sure.
Sure. Thank
Yeah.
you for your point of order. And now we're going to go to Francis O'Brien, Precinct 11. He moves to close debate on the main motion as amended. It is not debatable. We're not going to bring him in. But we will tell you that in the queue, we have Therese Brennan and Thomas Bagley, who still wanted to speak on the motion. But we're now going to go to this motion to close debate. It is a procedural motion. It's a 2/3 on whether to close debate on Article 29, the main motion as amended. And a 1 is a yes, a 2 is a no, 3 abstention. You'll see 30 on the screen. As soon as it starts ticking down, you can start to vote. You can vote now. This is a procedural motion. Town meeting members, please vote on whether to close debate on Article 29, main motion as amended. Town meeting members have the opportunity to make procedural inquiries, whether it's a point of order, whether it's to close debate, whether it's to question the quorum, whether it's to move to reconsider a previous motion. So town meeting members are doing that voting now on whether to close debate. Voting has ended. We're now going to see 84 in favor, 36 in opposition, 0 abstentions. That motion carries. We're going to go through the precincts quickly so you can see that your vote was properly recorded, but it is more than 2/3 who have voted to end the debate on Article 29. So you have the main motion from Mr. Canty with Mr. Bagley's motion to amend to the 700 gross square feet. Town meeting members have been debating now for probably about an hour on this article, precincts 13, 14, and 15. are showing, and finally we'll go to precincts 1, 2, and 3. So that shows you how town meeting members voted on whether to close debate. We can clear the speaker screen. We've ended the debate. We're now going to go on to vote on the main motion, Article 29. This is our first substantive vote on a main motion. We did have a substantive vote on the motion to amend, but this is our first main motion for this town meeting. Article 29. You're going to be voting yes, no, or abstaining. It's a 2/3 vote, and town meeting members are going to be able to vote when the clock starts to tick, and it ticks now. So you're going to be voting now. Town meeting members, you have 30 seconds. A 2/3 vote is required on Article 29, which is the first article that we are voting in this fall 2021 town meeting. As we conclude the debate on Article 29, town meeting members have been debating it. Following this, we'll go back to Article 1 and begin chronologically through the warrant. That completes the voting. 60 say yes, 63 say no, 1 abstention. It does not carry. We will go through the precincts and we will look at how town meeting members voted, and thereafter we will move back in our warrant with Article 1. We're seeing currently precincts 7, 8, and 9. As we scroll through the precincts, we can continue to see how town meeting members voted. And precincts 10, 11, and 12. And finally, we're continuing with precincts 13, 14, and 15. And we're going to continue with precincts in our town for 1, 2, and 3. And that completes the display of the voting for Article 29. Of course, it's a roll call vote with our virtual voting. Article 1A. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend the personnel bylaws in accordance with the memorandum of agreement dated August 26, 2021, located on pages 37 and 38 in the fall town meeting report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee. It is a majority vote. Mr. Canty?
In a vote of 12-0 with 1 abstention, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 1A. Approval of this article will adopt the personnel bylaw changes as outlined in the included memorandum.
Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, we have Melissa Arrighi, town manager. Again, it's a majority vote. We're going to go to Precinct 2, Richard Cirque, who wishes to speak on this. Precinct 2, Richard Cirque, we're bringing him in this morning. And Mr. Cirque is from Precinct 2. We're debating now Article 1A, which is a majority vote. And we're going to bring in from Precinct 2, Richard Cirque, town meeting member. I see him coming on. Good morning, Mr. Cirque.
Thank you.
See you. Hello. Proceed.
My comments apply to both Article 1A and Article 1B. In each case, I requested that the town supply me with data showing how Plymouth stands in relation to other municipalities, but was not furnished with that information in either case. How can we be asked to approve these agreements without such information? If the data shows that Plymouth is an outlier with respect to either agreement, wouldn't that make a difference on how we vote? Similarly, if the data shows that Plymouth is not an outlier, wouldn't that make a difference in how we vote? Unless and until I receive such data, I will have to vote no on both articles.
Thank you. Mr. Cirque, any further comments? I'm going to bring in our town manager, Melissa Arrighi. She is our town manager, and I'm just going to check in with her to see if she wishes to respond to any of the concerns from Mr. Cirque. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. So the article that you're voting on is the bylaw changes. I don't see anything in there where there would be the kind of comparables that Mr. Cirque was seeking. I know that he did want to see comparables for some of the collective bargaining agreements. Now, town meeting knows because you funded it years ago, we did take a look at overall how Plymouth and the employees fall with salary and benefits compared to other communities. I think that was done about 5 years ago now. Ultimately, that was not implemented because there was a decision made that that the unions, the employees, that management wanted to retain the existing health insurance benefits. So the salary changes were not implemented. So we did not spend the money to do that kind of study again, but that older information, and I can't tell you how valid it still is, as it is a few years old now, that is still available on the website. I think in these agreements that you'll see for the personnel bylaw, these are changes that for the most part, town meeting has already approved, and it needs to be updated in the bylaws. And for both collective bargaining agreements, these were worked on very hard by existing staff in cooperation with the unions and with the selectmen. So although we don't have comparables, we certainly had a great exchange of information and looked at what the employees want and what management needed to improve operations for our taxpayers.
Thank you. Melissa Riggi is our town manager. We're continuing with Article 1A. I'm not seeing any other speakers requesting speaking privileges. So we're going to go to the vote. This is a vote on Article 1A. And you'll see it on the screen. We're going to see the timer. And once we have the timer, we'll begin the voting. Once it starts to count down, voting begins now. Town meeting members are voting on Article 1A, which is in the warrant for the fall annual town meeting for 2021. We are going now through the warrant, beginning with Article 1A. It's a majority vote. All of the votes are roll call. I would tell on the last vote, Mr. Neely voted no. Mr. Neely, you may want to call the help desk since you've had a couple of times when your vote has not been recorded. But now we're completing the voting on Article 1A, and we have 106 yes, 9 no, 2 abstentions. It carries. We're going to be showing the various precincts, beginning with precincts 4, 5, and 6. Town meeting members can check your vote. And further, in addition to that, the public gets to see how the town meeting members are voting. And while we scroll through the precincts, I'm going to read into the record Article 1B. Mr. Canny moves the town vote to amend the firefighters IAFF Local 1768 collective bargaining agreement for the period July 1, 2021, July 30, 2024, in accordance with the memorandum of agreement located on pages 40 to 49 in the fall town meeting report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee. We've seen all the precincts on that last vote, so we're now going to go to Kevin Canty. He is the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Mr. Canty, on your motion. Mr. Canty, if you could unmute yourself so that we could hear you.
That would help.
Go ahead.
In a unanimous vote of 13-0 with no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 1B. Approval of this article will approve the negotiated memorandum of agreement for this employee bargaining unit.
Thank you. We're going to go to Precinct 8, Don Williams, and we're going to follow with Precinct 8, Paul Cunningham. We are now discussing Article 1B. Town meeting members have 3 minutes in which to speak on this motion. We're looking first for Donald Williams, Precinct 8, followed by Precinct 8, Paul Cunningham. And we have a number of panelists who are available to answer questions if needed. They include the Fire Chief, Edward Bradley, the Deputy Fire Chief, Neil Foley. Also, Marlene McCollum is with us as the Assistant Town Manager. We have Richard Quintal, he is Chair of the Select Board, and Betty Cavaco, Vice Chair and the Selectmen Board Liaison. Okay, and I'm being told on Article 29, again, Richard Neely was a yes, Mr. Withington a yes, Ms. Patton a yes, and Belinda Brewster was a yes. Thank you. And again, if you could check your V-voter application, town meeting members. But right now, we're looking for Donald Williams with Precinct 8. I'm not seeing Mr. Williams coming before us. He had asked me on the speakers list, but he didn't come on the queue, so perhaps he's not with us. Oh, there he is, Precinct 8, Donald Williams. Mr. Williams, we can see you've got the audio. Begin speaking. Go ahead.
There we go. We had a rather lively debate at Precinct 8 about this, and I realized that if we turn this down, it will go to arbitration, and then we generally lose arbitration. So I'm not going to vote no on this. But we were concerned, and I have 8 years of experience as a select person equivalent in Pennsylvania. And we did negotiations like this in a very fast-growing community. And my problems are threefold with this. One, usually our negotiations would ask for givebacks from the unions for anything that was given to them. I don't see any givebacks in this. Second, the CBA increase for the educational money is large enough to be significant. It ends up to be $1.16 million over the 3-year life by 2024. And number three, some of these givebacks, namely the certifications that reward training in areas which could result in new careers that are really not required knowledge for a firefighter. I mean, are we training our firefighters for higher paying careers so that they can leave us? Is this wise? My conclusion here is that we should have better negotiations in the future. This just is, in my opinion, wrong. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Donald Williams. We're going to continue with Paul Cunningham, Precinct 8, followed by Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15. And while we're bringing Mr. Cunningham, I would tell town meeting, I did receive a number of motions, which in my opinion, were trying to negotiate the agreement that's outside the scope of the authority of town meeting. Your authority is simply, are you going to approve the funding or not? So while you can make your comments at town meeting, the issue before us is, do we fund the amount requested, yes or no? Paul Cunningham, Precinct 8, we're bringing you in, and it'll be followed by Precinct 15, Michael Hanlon. I see Mr. Cunningham is on the screen. Mr. Cunningham, we need you to unmute yourself. We have your audio. Mr. Cunningham, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Cunningham, Precinct 8. Discussing this article here about the educational incentives, and they appear to be based on the Boston Police Quinn Bill of many years ago. And the two jobs of police and fire are quite different in the interfacing with the public. But this basically giving benefits of a degree to a 23-year-old firefighter is very nice, except that $5,000 annually means in a typical career, we've added $150,000 to them. It's a nice thing. But to include 22 other categories of various advancements, from driving different vehicles to working in confined spaces, these are better. You learn these things to be better in your job, enhance promotion opportunities, or for a firefighter to save your life. And we're paying $1,000 for each one of these 22 different categories. There's 7 more if you'd like to be a diver, go in the ponds. But to include a certificate for plumbing, electrical, and carpentry have nothing to do with the basic firefighter's job. I was denied a motion to eliminate these. So we as town meeting members have been told we cannot amend these agreements because they're completed by the time the town asks for our okay to fund them. I strongly suggest with so many town meeting members who are also on the Charter Commission who are having difficulty in finding anything worthwhile to change in our charter because no other town of 60,000 has this type of government, I suggest a memo of understanding and no agreement signing until the town funds the agreement. Otherwise, we as town meeting members are merely a rubber stamp because we cannot modify anything. And for that reason, there's nothing to do with personalities or departments. I will vote no rather than be a rubber stamp because we already have too many rubber stamps as it is. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Paul Cunningham. We're going to be continuing on with Article 1B. We're going to bring in Precinct 15, Michael Hanlon, be followed by Jeffrey Delap of Precinct 11. While we bring him in, I want to remind town meeting members that if you're having trouble getting your vote recorded, please call the help desk, because while I'm going to accept a few changes after the fact, I'm not going to be doing that if we have a very close vote. But some of these votes, such as Article 29, are not close. So Catherine Holmes now reports that her vote was not recorded. She's a yes. We'll correct that. So it's early on in the meeting. We're trying to have town meeting members get it right, but I cannot be accepting these late oral or written corrections after. You'll need to do a point of order immediately when the voting occurs and your name appears on the screen. We're bringing in Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15. Mr. Hanlon, we see you as far as audio, but not video. You can begin speaking now, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I wanted to speak to this article. First of all, let me say that I'm sure we all appreciate the great work that firefighters do to protect our health and safety and save lives. But I'm particularly troubled by this educational incentives and certifications that are shown on page 46 in the book. And I wanted to make specifically 2 points. We have all these educational incentives for associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees, and these are annual incentives for as long as this person or these people work. Now, I worked for over 40 years in the engineering business, and almost every place that I worked had a tuition reimbursement plan to pay employees to go get additional education and training. But it was a one-time payment, not an annual payment, not a lifetime. So I disagree with these annual stipends for associates and bachelor's degrees. Secondly, in the middle of the page, FA, it talks about annual stipends for $1,000 for construction supervisors, electrician, plumbing, hoisting. We don't need to be paying our employees for things that have nothing to do with their employment as a firefighter. So I disagree with that. And then I want to make a point about Mr. Williams' point about arbitration. If we vote no on this, I do not believe it goes back to arbitration or to arbitration at all. It goes back to collective bargaining to be renegotiated. And I think Mr. Williams is totally off base. But it sounded like he was going to vote yes, even though he disagreed with it. So I encourage everybody to vote no on this. I'm pretty sure all that's going to happen is it will go back to collective bargaining to be renegotiated. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15. We're going to go to Precinct 11, Jeffrey Delap, followed by Precinct 8, Catherine Holmes. We're debating Article 1B in the warrant, which is a majority vote. And we're continuing in the first session of our fall 2021 annual town meeting. We're looking for Jeffrey Delap to be joining us as a speaker. He is a town meeting member from Precinct 11. He'll be followed by Precinct 8, Catherine Holmes. We then have another speaker in the queue that's just joined us as we debate Article 1B. We will continue until approximately 10 a.m., at which time we will take a recess. and reconvene following the recess. I see Jeffrey on the screen. I don't see his video, but we can hear him. So Mr. Delep, please proceed. Jeffrey, go ahead. You're recognized to speak on this article. Go ahead, Jeffrey. We don't have your video, but we have your audio. Go ahead. You can start talking now. This is Plymouth Town Meeting, and it's coming to you live. We have a request for speaking. Precinct 11, Jeffrey Delap. I can see him on our monitor. He is not muted. Jeffrey, if you could begin speaking. And otherwise, we'll have to come back to Mr. Delap if he is not going to exercise his speaking privilege. We're going to go to Catherine. Go to Catherine. Precinct 8, Catherine Holmes. Welcome, Catherine.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you. We can see you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I had a little delay there. So thank you, everybody. I just had a quick clarity. I wanted some clarity. To Mr. Hanlon's point, he said that this increase would actually be for the life of their employment. But my understanding is that this actually is not, it surpasses the life of the employment because it's considered, I forget the wording, like a stipend or, and so with that, it becomes part of their salary. So when we're approving these types of tuition enhancements, we're actually also agreeing to increase their salary, which then becomes part of their pension. Can someone from the town speak to the impact that this would have? And has there been, when we were agreeing this, because it looked like there was a almost unanimous support from Select Board and FinCom on this, which I was surprised by. I'm just kind of curious, did anybody calculate how much this would actually impact the taxpayer overall in the life of all of the estimated amount of fire people that are going to be potentially qualifying for this? Thank you.
Thank you. And in response to a question, we're going to bring in Assistant Town Manager Marlene McCollum, who will be responding to a question from Town Meeting Member Catherine Holmes, Precinct 8. The Assistant Town Manager is, as she is. Good morning, Marlene, and welcome.
Thank you. So stipends for the employees are considered pensionable compensation. So they do apply towards retirement. Obviously, any particular retirement calculation depends on at what point the person chooses to retire. So I don't have a calculation on the amount that this would actually increase the retirement obligation by, but all stipends are certainly pensionable compensation.
Thank you. Catherine Holmes, any further comments?
Yeah, I would like, if someone must have, I would have to assume that someone must have tried to calculate that when agreeing 100% to support this. So Lynn, do you have any idea what an estimate is on what this is going to cost the town of Plymouth and specifically how it's going to impact our taxpayer?
30 seconds and a question to the
So
Director
included
of
in your
Finance,
materials.
Lynn Barrett. Go ahead, Lynn.
Included in your materials was the cost over the 3-year contract, additional costs over the 3-year contract. As far as the cost that would happen to the retirement system, that would have to be calculated by an actuary, and we do that every 2 years. So the next time the actuary values the retirement system, those salaries would get included into that actuarial estimate. I'm not an actuary, so I could not possibly calculate what the benefit would be in their retirement.
Thank you.
So going forward, we're being asked to fund this and to agree to the funding on it. It's the same point that Mr. Williams and Mr. Hanlon made. We're being asked to approve something that we actually don't know the full impact to the taxpayer. which is really concerning to me. I am a huge supporter of our fire department, and I want to support the majority of this. I have concerns, as they do, with the types of educational reimbursements that are, or stipends that are being supported. So is there a way in the future that when you're asking us to vote on these union contracts, that you could do some preliminary with an actuary to understand what the actual impact is to the taxpayer? Thank you.
Thank you, and your time has expired, Catherine, but in responding to her, Lynn Barrett, any further comments to add? No. Thank you. We're going to continue on. I'm not seeing Jeffrey Delap on my request for speakers. I'm not sure if we've been able to bring him in as a speaker. He's in, but he's not being brought up on the screen. Precinct 11, Jeffrey Delap, if we can bring him in. And there he is. Good. Jeffrey, good morning. Go ahead and talk. We can see you and you're not muted.
Hello.
There you are. Go ahead. Talk.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. First, I would like to ask for the indulgence of everyone. This is my first town meeting. As a retired firefighter, I would just like to speak on some of the issues here. When people have arcing wires in their house, or people have the smell of something burning in their house, they call the fire department, who come in, and someone with experience in electricity and as an electrician is a great asset to have, you know, at your house at that time. And additionally with plumbing, with gas, and also with building construction, as people, firefighters are on roofs, firefighters are have to know if the building can handle a situation that's currently in a dangerous position. As for the pensions, firefighters and all public employees in the state of Massachusetts now pay 12% of their salaries into the pension system. This basically self-funds all the pensions. I believe you can ask the town administrator about this as well. Someone who works for 32 years on the fire department basically funds their own pension with the money available that they put in. It doesn't really draw off the town. And third, if it's a stipend, it is not pension eligible. Therefore, the money must be paid on a regular basis and not a one-time a year stipend for it to be pension eligible. So I would like to ask if the town administrator could look into, you know, not look into this, but actually say something about it just for these issues. Thank you very much.
A question for, again, Assistant Town Manager Marlene McCollum, or I guess we have, yes, Marlene McCollum responding. Thank you.
Thank you. So these these stipends are organized so that they will be paid in each regular payroll. So I do want to reiterate that they are pensionable wages. They will be applied on every paycheck.
And at this time, we're going to continue with Mr. Delap. Go ahead. You have 16 seconds.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me?
Yeah, do you have a final comment? We're just about done with your speaking time.
Yes, sir. 2 points, Mr. Moderator. 2 years ago, this body voted to extend Chief Bradley 2 years beyond mandatory retirement. And that was because it was said that no one was qualified. So now the union and the town is coming to these incentives to better prepare the future leaders of the department. And also, this is not an arbitration award. This was collectively bargained between the town, the union. There was a select board member present during negotiations. It was vetted through the select board. and the Finance Committee unanimously supported it. I also have a couple questions for Chief Bradley.
Mr.
How
Delap,
long have these?
your time has expired. If you can just give your questions, and then we're going to move on. We have a long speaker list. What are your questions?
Okay. The question for Chief Bradley is, how long have these stipends been available to the membership? And in that time frame, how many members have taken advantage of these stipends? And then also, would about how long does it take to get some of these stipends, and what time frame would he see that it would take till a good amount of the membership took advantage of these stipends?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Edward Bradley is the Chief Fire Department for the Town of Plymouth. Mr. Bradley, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. The education stipend, excuse me, the education stipend for an associate's degree has been part of the collective bargaining agreement since the late 1970s. I remember that, it been in the agreement when I came on. It was upgraded in 2011, and it went from $1,200 to $2,500 a yearly stipend. And although 100% of the membership are eligible for this and available, over the years, only 10.7% of the people have taken advantage of it so far. Now, in order to get either an associate's degree or even the bachelor's degree, they would be taking college courses. They're working full-time, 42 hours a week. They would probably be going to college, taking college courses part-time. It could take, I mean, if they sped it up and went full-time and were able to find coverage and things like that, they might be able to do it in 2 or 3 years, but it's probably closer to 4 years for the associate's degree. And then, of course, the bachelor's degree, typically it would be someone who had already earned associate's degree that would then move up to the bachelor's degree. And, where we only have the 10% of the, just under 11% of the membership that have taken advantage of so far, that's about the percentage that would be available for moving up to the next degree, which is the bachelor's degree. The other certification stipends, although they have been part of the contract since also 2016. Yeah, so about 5 years. Although they list the categories that are accepted by the National Fire Protection Agency and also by the Massachusetts Fire Training Council at the numbers you might have heard, like 23 and 24, they were only eligible to get up to 3 of them per year. This contract will allow them to earn a 4th one, in that range. And if they happen to have a professional license, like a construction supervisor's license or a licensed plumber, electrician, they could use one of those with the professional licensure. Now, I can tell you, nobody is going to go out and get a licensed electrician's license for this job to be paid $1,000 a year. We have a few people that are on the job that have that. I can also tell you that in every promotional exam, from lieutenant to captain, battalion chief, deputy chief, and even chief, they ask questions on building construction. They ask questions on electrical and plumbing, because a building that is on fire is a building that is being demolished. And the more they know about how that building is built and how it's constructed, the more they're going to recognize when that building is going to collapse. It is absolutely relative to what they're doing every single day.
Thank you, Edward Bradley, Fire Chief. And now we have a motion to close debate. Precinct 2, Thomas Pinto moves to close debate. It is not debatable. I do have a queue. I don't follow the order of the queue since several people have already spoken, so they go to the bottom. But I have Mr. Delafield, Mr. Arienti, Mr. Brennan, Ms. Williams, Mr. Pulcinelli, and Mr. Kelly in the queue. And so at this time, town meeting members will determine whether to close debate on Article 1B. It is not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. You will see on the screen, there's the vote to close debate. We're waiting for the timer to come up. Following this, we'll be taking a morning recess. Voting will begin shortly. Voting begins now. Town meeting members are voting on whether to close debate. If we do vote to close debate, we will take up the main motion before recess. If not, we will go to recess. Town meeting members are voting on whether to close debate. It's a procedural motion. It requires a 2/3 vote. Town meeting members have been moving along this morning with the warrant and with a number of procedural motions. That concludes the vote on this motion. 81 say yes, 42 say no, 0 abstentions. The motion does not carry. This town meeting will stand in recess till 10:10 a.m. Thank you. Those who participated in the opening ceremony, thank you to our Plymouth Boy Scout Troop 1620 for allowing the rebroadcast of their performance from the last town meeting. Thanks to Senior Patrol Leader Robbie Cunningham for narrating, James Bump, Matthew King, their color guard services, and Scouts Patrick Oberg, Liam Holland, Kyle Arsenal, Liam Joyce, Ben Leach, Chucky King, Sebastian Dume, Shay Davies, and Aiden Bazinski. Our appreciation to Hannah Flockton. She's a senior at Plymouth North High School on performing the national anthem. Also express appreciation to Father John Cullity from St. Mary's Parish for his participation in the opening ceremonies of town meeting and for offering the invocation. Thank you also to Richard Quintal, chair of the Plymouth Select Board. In addition, we wish to recognize PAC TV, which is cable casting this town meeting live on Comcast 15, Verizon 47 on PAC TV's streaming channel, pactv.org/live. We'd like to thank Julie Thompson, Mark McKinley, Donna Rodriguez, Brooke Hoffman, Dave Antoine, Dave Maybrook, Keith Hughes, Nate Greenstein, Max Berger. We'd like to thank all of them, and town meeting will replay on Comcast 15 and Verizon 47, and residents will be able to watch town meeting in its entirety online next week on the PAC TV video share channel on YouTube, youtube.com/user/PAC-TV video share. The YouTube channel also features all of the past town meeting related videos and specials from town meeting presentation night and town meeting preview. And now we return to article which we have been debating at this town meeting, and it is Article 1B, and we have a speaker's queue. We're going to go to that. We're going to begin, however, first we have a point of order. Precinct 10, Peter Neville, has a point of order. So we'll bring in Peter Neville on a point of order, and then we will be going to Precinct 7, Michael Ryan. Mr. Neville, on your point of order, and as we bring him in, town meeting members are using the V-Voter video conferencing platform. They're also using, from OTI Technologies, they're also using the Zoom webinar video conferencing platform.
Can you hear me, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you, but go ahead and speak.
Well, it's probably better not that you can't see me. I'm not as handsome as the rest of the folks that we've seen this morning. I guess, Steve, I'm Peter Neville. I'm from Precinct 10. And I just need a clarification on your selection of speakers. I'd hate to think that if you see someone that has spoken on a prior motion, that you're not going to recognize their position in the queue on the current motion. I'm worried that we'll fail to hear from people who have perhaps more experience and more research on, for instance, the current article. But because you've heard them speak, for instance, on Article 1, you're going to put them at a lower ranking of speakers on the current article. And I guess what comes to mind is that would you hold the same rule for those people who have moved the question, so that anyone that has moved the question on Article 1 would, if they try to do that on Article 2 or Article 3, you would say, well, I've already heard from them, so I'm not going to move the question. So could you just clarify how you're going to treat prior speakers on current motions? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Peter Neville, Precinct 10. Good questions. So first of all, for town meeting members, I always give speaking priority on procedural motions. A point of order, which is why I called on Mr. Neville just now before all the other speakers in the queue. A motion to close debate. A motion to reconsider. All of those are going to jump ahead of a speaker. In terms of a speaker, I have said consistently over the years that speaking priority will be given to those who have not yet spoken. And the reason I do that is because I want to be as inclusive as possible for all 135 town meeting members. So it's true what Mr. Neville says. If you've spoken on an earlier motion, you may not get called. In fact, on this speaker's queue, I see a couple of town meeting members who have already spoken, and they're going to the bottom because I've got several others who have not spoken. And so unless someone else can come up with a better proposal as to how to be inclusive of the 135 town meeting members, that's the manner in which I'm going to proceed as I select speakers. You can contact me in advance of town meeting. A number of people did, and I put you in the book as people who want to be sure they're recognized. But also on the speakers queue, I'm going to be looking at who hasn't yet spoken. I have another point of order from Precinct 5, Michael Withington, followed by a motion to close debate, Precinct 11, Jeffrey Delap. So first, if we can bring back in Michael Withington on a point of order. He's at Precinct 5. And then we'll also bring in, we don't need to bring in Mr. Delap. He has his motion to close debate. So Michael Withington, I can see you on the screen. If you can unmute yourself. There he is. Mr. Withington, proceed.
Thank you. I don't mean to take up valuable time, but I do think that there's a point of order that's very important. If we have one voice as town meeting members, and that's our vote, and if the V-voter platform does not register that vote, and we have to call in, then that vote should be registered. If it's incorrect, it should be corrected. And I take exception to the town council ruling that we have to immediately reply when we are not responsible for the technology. As we've had some hiccups in this, it's expected, but I expect my vote and everyone else's vote to be counted, even if it's a delay. That's my opinion, and I believe that anybody who doesn't want their vote counted, then don't vote.
Mr. Withington, thank you for your comment. That was not a ruling of town council. That was my determination as the town moderator. And to date, everyone's vote.
And I take exception with that, Steve.
Mr. Withington, if you let me finish, not interrupt, and then we'll hear you some more. That is my ruling because I cannot have town meeting members possibly trying to change the vote after it's been taken if it's a close vote, such as a tie or one vote. Just like at town meeting, you need to vote in the time. And just so you'll know, in most cases, at the start of the meeting where we had late votes, it was operator error. In fact, the town meeting members have acknowledged their error. And town meeting members have the opportunity to be trained. They've had the opportunity to participate in the preview, in the presentation night, to take practice votes. We have a help desk. And so at this point, I cannot have any town meeting member unfairly change a vote that is close if they fail to register their vote at the time the vote occurs. If they're busy walking out of the room, if they're busy chatting or doing other things and they don't pay attention, that's not fair to the legislative body. And that's not what happens in other legislative bodies where people come and go and aren't ready for the vote. Your points are noted. Thank you. Jeffrey DeLapp, Precinct 11, moves to close debate. It is not debatable. We do have a speaker's queue. We're going to show the speaker's queue. Again, to the previous point of Mr. Neville, you'll see in the queue some people have already spoken. They'll follow the bottom, so I won't go on the order of the queue. But at this point, we have a motion to close debate on Article 1B. This is procedural. We're going to call that up on the screen. And we have a yes, a no, an abstention. And we're going to have the timer, and there it is. 30 seconds, and it's now counting down. You have the opportunity to vote. Town meeting members are voting. It's a procedural vote on whether to close debate. It is a 2/3 vote. And so in this case, town meeting members can decide whether they want to continue to debate Article 1B or whether they want to move to a vote on Article 1B. It is a majority vote on the main motion. If we go to the main motion, town meeting members are now completing whether to close debate. Here are the results. 83 say yes, 36 say no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. We're going to go through the precincts so that all town meeting members can make sure that their vote was registered. This is an example where it's not close on the 2/3. If someone, for some reason, has operator error, we can certainly correct their vote on this. But again, look at your vote on the precincts. If you're having trouble with your V-voter, please contact the help desk. But the vast majority of town meeting members now are voting and voting with ease. You'll see that we have a fairly large number of people voting. This is a high attendance and a high record of voting, 119 people voting on this vote. And we've now completed showing the vote. So now we're going to go to the main motion on Article 1B. All town meeting members, the debate has ended. You voted to close debate. We're now going to vote on Article 1B. It's a majority vote. And there it is up on the screen, a yes for 1, a no for 2, an abstention for 3. The timer shows 30, and we're going to begin to run the timer now. Town meeting members are now voting on Article 1B. It's the main motion to amend the firefighters' collective bargaining agreement for the period July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2024, and it's in accordance with the memorandum of agreement located on pages 40 to 49. And it's a majority vote of town meeting. Town meeting has been continuing in the morning session. We've come back from the recess, and we're completing the voting on Article 1B. It's concluded, and now the vote. It'll come before you on the screen. The results, 86 in favor, 34 in opposition, 3 abstentions. The motion does carry. And as we scroll through the precincts, we're going to move on in the warrant, and we're going to move on to Article 1C. As you see, precincts 4, 5, and 6. The green is a yes. The red is a no. The yellow is an abstention. Town meeting members, check your vote. Let us know if you've been properly recorded. As I read into the record, Article 1C. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend the Collective Bargaining Relief Association COBRA agreement for the period July 1, 2021, June 30, 2024, in accordance with a memorandum of agreement located on pages 1 to 15 in the Fall Town Meeting Supplement 2 to the report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee. And I believe we completed scrolling through all the precincts on 1B. So I'm now going to go to Kevin Canty. He is the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee, and he is the maker of the main motion. Mr. Canty, on your motion.
In a vote of 9-0 with 1 abstention, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 1C. Approval of this article will approve the negotiated memorandum of agreement for this employee bargaining unit.
Thank you. And we have a point of order. So we're going to go to that. Precinct 12, Betsy Hall. We'll bring in Betsy Hall for her point of order. We'll welcome her back to town meeting. This is Plymouth Fall 2021 town meeting. It's coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. We are participating remotely pursuant to Massachusetts general laws, and town meeting members are using video Zoom conferencing. Betsy Hall, we can see you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you to the town meeting member who brought up the speaker situation. When I noticed that Article 29 was going to be one of the last articles that we heard, I did ask to be a speaker, but then I said to myself, I really can't speak on any other article between 1 and 29, because if I do, I might be disallowed as a speaker on 29 because I've already spoken. I did not ask to be a speaker on any other article for the same reason. If I ask to speak on article, I'm just going to guess 10, then I might be disallowed to speak on Article 29. And I don't know two things. One, if I'm listed as a speaker for Article 29 and I've already spoken, do I move up on the list because I've ahead of time said I want to be a speaker on 29? Do people who have indicated ahead of time, are they at the top of the list? So could you please clarify for that for me, please, Steve?
Sure. So first of all, the word disallowed is inappropriate because you're always allowed to speak. As moderator, I don't determine whether you get to speak because you're going to get to speak unless there's a motion to close debate. It'll be the town meeting, 2/3 of the town meeting, that will decide if you've not yet spoken, whether you're still going to get a chance to speak, because that's on the motion to close debate. What I can tell you is that using this as an example, I see on my list here 4 people that want to speak, and 2 of them have already spoken. So I'm going to go to those other 2 people that have never spoken yet at this town meeting. And that's how I'm going to do it throughout town meeting. And so you can put your name on the speaker list, and if everybody else on the list that has not spoken at all has spoken, I may then call on you, particularly if you've only spoken once and I've got somebody else that's spoken 3 or 4 times. I'm going to try to give speaking priority to those on the list who have spoken fewer times, because I believe that's the fairest way in which to deal with 135 town meeting members. And I'm going to now move to Richard Cirque.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I have one more question. So on Article 29, if I didn't speak up until then, I would be one of the first speakers. And would I be the first speaker if I were the only one who had notified you ahead of time?
That is correct. Because you were on the speaker list, you notified me ahead of time. And if you hadn't spoken before, you're number 1. Because I'm going to go to those people first.
Okay,
because
thank you.
they're preparing. I'm trying to encourage preparation of town meeting so that we get the motions in advance. I mean, I've been dealing with a motion to amend this morning as we're doing town meeting, and we're gonna hear that motion to amend. But it's better if that person knew in advance that she wanted to make that motion to amend, that she get it to us ahead of time, that we can pass it out to town meeting members, because now you're all going to be surprised when it comes up. But I'm going to go to Richard Cirque, who has a point of order, Precinct 2. We're going to welcome back Richard Cirque, and then we're going to continue on Article 1C. Richard Cirque from Precinct 2, and this is Plymouth Town Meeting. It's coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. And following Mr. Cirque, we have Precinct 4, John Hammond, who will be a speaker who will called, and he'll be followed by Precinct 5, Wrestling Brewster. Mr. Cirque, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to note as a point of order that my vote on Article 1B was not recorded. It was a no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Cirque. Appreciate that. Now go to Mr. Hammond. John Hammond, Precinct 4. Mr. Hammond, we're going to welcome you in to speak at town meeting, be followed by Precinct 5, Wrestling Brewster. This is Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting, and we're in Article 1C, and we're bringing in Precinct 4, John Hammond, who has not previously spoken, followed by Mr. Brewster, who has not previously spoken, and then we'll continue on with the speaking list such as it's been presented. I see Mr. Hammond. Mr. Hammond, if you can unmute yourself. We're not seeing your video, but I'm also seeing that your mic is muted. So, and you're unmuted now, and you can begin to speak, and we can see you. Go ahead, Mr. Hammond.
Well, my first thing I want to say is that this is a whacking adjustment over 3 years of 16 to 22% raise. So I have several questions for the town administration. Why such a large increase in pay? And then my two other questions: how many people does this affect? And I guess I have 4 questions. How much do we pay a laborer in the DPW? And how does this compare with other towns?
Thank you. And we're going to go to Jonathan Beater. He is the Director of Department of Public Works, responding to John Hammond, Precinct 4, who's provided several questions. Good morning, Mr. Beater. And unmute yourself if you would.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
Yes,
Proceed.
Jonathan
Go ahead.
Beater, Director of Public Works. Good morning, everybody. So just in response to Mr. Hammond's initial question, everybody, was this contract was all about recruitment and retention and our ability to attract employees and really catch us up in terms of what we pay our employees. And I know a previous speaker, Mr. Cirque, asked about, comps, and the same thing with Mr. Hammond about comps. I'm going to use one of our foremen for an example, okay? So we have several foremen within the DPW. We have multiple grades of positions within the DPW, OM1s through OM7s, and foremans are OM6. Majority of our foremen fall in the OM6 category, okay? So currently, I'm going to use an OM6-1. We have several steps of each of those OM1 grades, steps 1 through 8. So an OM6-1 currently makes $26.78 an hour. With all the changes as proposed in the MOA, that foreman base pay, the OM6-1, will go to $29.23. So when you look at that $29.23 per hour rate, we compared that to 3 other towns. I know the DPW directors in East Bridgewater, Marshfield, and Carver. They forwarded me their information. So again, going forward, a DPW foreman in the COBRA contract would be making $29.23 an hour. East Bridgewater pays their foreman currently $27.74 to $31.89. Marshfield pays their foreman $31.01 to $31.94. And Carver pays their foreman $27.18 to $35.10. So with this increase, we fall right in the ranges of some adjacent towns. And again, this was all about retention, recruitment, really bringing the COBRA contract up to speed. This has been my 3rd contract that I've been involved with since 2011. Some really great modifications to this contract, both in terms of concessions by the union and some favorable items for all of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond, any further questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I do have a further panelist who wants to speak, but I got to go to a point of order for Mr. Malaguti. Everett Malaguti, Precinct 1, point of order, followed by Michael Brennan, motion to close debate. We're first going to go to Mr. Everett Malaguti, Precinct 1. He is on a point of order. Town meeting members have a number of procedural motions or points they can make at town meeting. But we're going to first go to a point of order, and then we'll go to the motion to close debate. I see Mr. Malaguti. Mr. Malaguti, if you could unmute yourself on the screen. You're unmuted. We can't see you, but proceed talking. We can hear you.
Yes, I requested a point of order as my voter and computer froze during the last vote, and I immediately sent a point of order, but somehow it didn't get recognized. My vote never showed up because of that, and it was a no vote.
Thank you. We'll register that no vote. Appreciate it. Now,
thank you.
Michael Brennan, Precinct 7, a motion to close debate. It is not debatable. I would show you that in the queue, if we can remove Betsy Hall, point of order, she's already spoken. We now have in the queue 3 people, Mr. Delafield, Mr. Brewster, Mr. Babini. So at this time, we're going to take the motion to close debate on Article 1C. It's not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. Town meeting members will be voting on whether to close debate on Article 1C. And this is a procedural vote. You'll see the 1, 2, and 3 for yes, no, and abstain. 30 seconds shown on the timer. The timer is going to begin momentarily. It's beginning now. Town meeting members can now vote on Article 1C. Plymouth 2021 Fall Annual Town Meeting is coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. We began at 8 a.m. We're going to take a brief lunch recess around the noon hour as we continue through the warrant. We're currently on Article 1C. We have 30 articles in the warrant, some with multiple. And at this point, 78 say yes, no 43, 2 abstentions. The motion does not carry. We're going to continue now. Precinct 5, Wrestling Brewster, followed by Precinct 4, Michael Babini. Again, 2 people have not yet spoken, so they'll be given speaking priority. We're going to begin with Mr. Brewster. I can see you, Mr. Brewster. You need to unmute yourself so we can hear you. We can now see that you're unmuted. Go ahead and speaking. We're not seeing your video, but go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just got a couple comments. Firstly, as a town meeting member, I'm really very saddened that we would take a warrant, an article like this on the last hour. I'm very tired of getting these things the last hour and them being, seen by town meeting. We haven't had time to vet this. I've got all kinds of questions. I'd like to know who on the select board negotiated this, but I urge our town meeting members to not approve this just because we just got it and we haven't had time to talk about it, to debate it. It wasn't in the caucuses. I'd first like to know who on the select board did the negotiations on this. And there's a whole lot of questions that I have about this that, I really urge our town meeting members to vote no on this because we haven't had enough time to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And further responding to Mr. Brewster's question and concern, I'm going to bring in Betty Cavaco. She's with us as a panelist. She's the select board liaison and she's prepared to respond. Welcome, Betty Cavaco.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, town meeting, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I, myself, and Mr. Quintal, the chairman, were the liaison for the DPW negotiations. Unfortunately, sometimes the status of negotiations happens all too quickly. I can say without hesitation that we negotiated this contract fairly and equitably and have no issues following. I will be more than happy to answer any questions that our town meeting members have. The negotiating team with the town manager, Mr. Beater, the director, and a couple others, we spent a great number of hours on this. It was vetted quite thoroughly through the Advisory and Finance Committee, and they also voted unanimously with only one abstention. So I am here to answer any questions. I feel that this is a good contract. I mean, unfortunately, Plymouth has become the training ground for every municipality and other private firm in the entire Commonwealth. And it's time that we stop that and we get good candidates, keep good candidates, and provide the services that our residents not only need, but deserve.
Vetted properly.
Thank you, Betty
It was
Blanco,
vetted properly.
Select Board Liaison. Mr. Brewster, did you have any other further comments you wish to make?
No, thank you. I just hope the town meeting, would like to debate this much further and get a lot more information before we vote on it.
Thank you. That's Precinct 5 Town Meeting Member Wrestling Brewster. And now we're going to go to Precinct 4, Michael Babini, followed by Precinct 4, Charles Votran. And while we're bringing in Mr. Babini, I want to just make further comments regarding missed votes. I believe the assistant moderator said in the chat, we will accept them immediately following the vote, either messaging her or indicating through a point of order. We can't take it much beyond the vote having immediately occurred, since we don't want to unfairly change a vote sometime much in the future. So, Mr. Babini, I see that you're here. If you can unmute yourself so we can begin with you. Michael Babini is from Precinct 4. The microphone has that slash through the diagonal, so we need to unmute yourself, Michael Babini, so that we can hear you and that you'll speak. This is Plymouth Town Meeting, and Mr. Babini, you can go ahead and speak. We can't see you, but we'll hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Beater had mentioned that there were concessions made by the union in this contract. Could he summarize those for us, please?
Jonathan Beater is the Director of Public Works. Mr. Beater.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Mr. Babini. There were multiple concessions, and if you go through the MOA, you'll be able to see that. But I'll run through them off the top of my head, okay? So in terms of upgrading positions, I mentioned we had several categories, OM1 through OM7. The contract currently reads anything above an OM5 is based on experience and qualifications. The union agreed to drop that down to an OM4, which is good for us. We have language in the contract that requires 2 men in a truck during snowstorms. The union was willing to drop that language as well. All of our Class A and Class B drivers receive a drug allowance of $100 for successfully passing a drug test. That was removed from the CBA. Forges Field, I'm sure everybody's aware of Forges Field, beautiful recreational facility in terms of baseball fields, softball fields, and a variety of other events, for the town. We have never been able to do work in there. There's a condition in the CBA which prevents us from doing that. The union lifted that restriction so we can go in there and start servicing that. Memorial Hall had conditions in terms of restricting the types of employees we could put in there. They required a maintenance worker and a custodian. We were allowed to kind of choose and designate what staff we put in. The union has allowed us greater flexibility in work assignments to move employees throughout all of our divisions per se. So if we have a laborer in highway, we can move that laborer to parks and forestry with notification. Language with OSHA, as everybody knows, we've had changes in OSHA law a couple of years ago. Phenomenal language that was a huge necessity for us in terms of our foremen and heavy equipment operators documenting what happens in the field and making sure our sites are safe. That's a great one. Custodians, we have been allowed to get into all of our municipal buildings, including the fire stations, to start doing cleaning. I think that's, off the top of my head, that's pretty much it, Mike. Again, all basic fundamental changes. Some other things in terms of check cashing. Employees can't cash, they don't get 15 minutes, they're not allowed to use a vehicle to cash their checks. Some housekeeping with more human resources types of things following the law with FMLA. Article 21 is another language provision that was dropped where employees are allowed to get time and a half during the day if they work alongside contractors, removed. So at the end of the day, and if you go through the MOA, you'll see all of these concessions made by the union, and we're very pleased with them. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, JB.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to go to Precinct 11, Jeffrey Delap. He moves to close debate. Procedural motion will show the queue. We have a number of town meeting members that still care to be heard on Article 1C. If we could just show the queue, or I'll read it. Mr. Delafield, Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Vautrin, Mr. Weber, Mr. Cirque. Town meeting members now can vote on whether to close debate on Article 1C. It requires a 2/3 vote. It'll be, we're seeing the time, there's the vote, there's the timer, and town meeting members can begin voting now. This is a procedural motion to close debate. Just to clarify some of the early discussion, if your vote is missed, do a point of order, not in the chat. We want to have it an official vote. We're not going to have people changing votes after they have voted. But if you've missed the vote for some reason due to operator error, or some mentioned earlier their computer froze, you can also call in order to get that point of order to our attention. Town meeting members have completed the vote. 80 say yes, 41 say no, 1 abstention. It is not 2/3. As we scroll through, we're going to bring in Mr. Vautrin, Precinct 4, followed by Mr. Weber, Precinct 3. We're debating Article 1C. We're going through the precincts to show how town meeting members did vote. And as you can see, there's a 1 vote difference, again, on this 2/3 vote. Your vote does count, town meeting members. We've had a number of votes today that have been very close, as with this particular motion to close debate. So we're going to begin. Mr. Vautrin has not previously spoken. Mr. Weber has not spoken. Mr. Vautrin, we can see you, but you're muted. You're unmuted. You can proceed to speak. Mr. Vautrin. Charles Vautrin, Precinct 4.
Okay.
Go
I'm
ahead.
having audio problem.
You're having video problems, but your audio we can hear. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead and speak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can see you
okay,
too. Go
maybe you
ahead.
can see me now. Okay, well, with Article 1C, one thing is I don't like the fact that we don't have any kind of percentage showing of how much of a raise these people are getting. Also, I believe going back to 1B.
No, we're not going back to 1B.
Okay, well, then I guess I can ask about 1C. If we vote this down, do we have to renegotiate, or do we go to arbitration?
A question for, I believe, Marlene McCollum. She's the Assistant Town Manager. I would ask her to come in to respond to Mr. Vautrin regarding what is the effect if town meeting votes down Article 1C. So I'm not seeing her. There she is. Marlene, do you care to respond as to the process, or should we bring in the town manager?
I wasn't involved in bargaining this, so I will defer to either Ms. Barrett or Ms. Origi.
We'll bring in the town manager, Melissa Origi. And Melissa, you heard the question from Mr. Vautrin, and what would be the process following a no vote?
No votes on any collective bargaining agreement that goes to town meeting would just send us back to the table to start to bargain again and see if we can change things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vautrin, any further comments?
No, I'm done. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to now go to Precinct 3, Dale Weber. Dale Weber is a town meeting member. Mr. Weber, we're going to bring you in now as a speaker at town meeting. And we see you and we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, town meeting members. For the record, my name is Dale Weber, and I am appearing before you in this forum as the president of the Collective Bargaining Relief Association with the acronym of COBRA. The Plymouth right now is, the Plymouth DPW is experiencing an inability to recruit and retain employees and workers. Pre-COVID, we were down 12 positions in recruitment, and during COVID, we've picked up another 12 vacancies based on the status that we enjoyed back in the 90s. And Plymouth has grown exponentially in that time, not by geographics, but by infrastructure needs. So we are basically hemorrhaging here as it relates to our ability to retain and recruit. We have people that come here when we finally do recruit them, and they leave very, very soon afterwards. Some people within weeks, other people within months. And they go to other communities that pay more. So the bottom line here is that we are, because of that inability to recruit and retain, we're not able to provide all the services that the taxpayers rightfully request and demand in a timely manner. So throughout this negotiation process, and it was a very amicable and collective process by both parties. I want to thank both parties that were involved in this on the employer and the employee side of the equation. But it has been our collective goal during the negotiation process, leading up to this ultimate ratification, to apply a Band-Aid, so to speak, to the hemorrhaging and try to improve our position in the marketplace to recruit and retain. So on behalf of the workers that I represent, I am no longer an employee of the DPW, but I did serve 38 years with the Department of Public Works, and I've been retired for 5. So we look forward to also working together in the coming months to move the Department of Public Works towards meeting the American Public Works Association accreditation standards. This will open the door for a lot of increased opportunities to enhance the service delivery of the Department of Public Works. And we're looking forward to working with management and administration and this legislative process to do this. But it's an intense process. And
thank you. We have 2 procedural motions. We're going to begin first with Precinct 12, Lawrence Delafield, point of order, followed by Precinct 5, Dennis Sullivan, motion to close debate. Mr. Delafield, on your point of order, we'll welcome you back into this morning session of town meeting. Town meeting members are using V-Voter in order to communicate their procedural motions. Mr. Delafield, I can see you. You're unmuted. Go ahead and speak.
Yeah, just quickly that my last vote was not recorded. It was a no vote, and just wanted it recorded.
Thank you, Mr. Delafield. A no vote on the last vote by Mr. Delafield.
And just in connection with that, I've been having trouble with my V-Voter. It appears to be working now, but I have had trouble with it. Hopefully all is cleared up. And I do not need to speak on the issue because I have already, somebody else.
I'm not going to hear your speak on the issue because I've got a motion to close debate, but thank you. And anyone that has trouble with your V-Voter, if you can't resolve it with the help desk, there are people at Plymouth North High School who can support you in connection with the virtual participation. We're going to go to Precinct 5, Dennis Sullivan. He's going to close debate. We don't have to actually bring him in, but it's to close debate. I see 4 people in the queue. Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Cirque, Ms. McCarthy, Ms. Brewster. This is a motion to close debate on Article 1C at Plymouth Town Meeting. We're going to call up so that people can vote. 1 is a yes, 2 is a no, 3 abstention. We're going to call the timer, 30 seconds. When it starts to count, you can start to vote. Town meeting members are now voting on whether to close debate on Article 1C. It's a 2/3 vote. town meeting members can vote whether to continue debate or close debate. They decide whether or not they want to hear more from their fellow town meeting members or whether or not they've heard enough and they're ready to now vote. And it requires more than a majority. It requires 2/3 of town meeting members. But if 2/3 decide they've heard enough, then we go to the vote on the main motion. And we're now going to say 93 say yes, 27 say no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries by more than 2/3, and we're now going to vote on the main motion. We're going to scroll through the precincts so that everybody can see that their vote was properly recorded. And you'll notice that we have continued to increase the number of people voting, and we're now up to 120 people voting in that last vote. Very good turnout, high percentage for Plymouth Town Meeting coming to you virtually. And we're scrolling through the various precincts, and now we've done 1, 2, and 3. So now we're going to go to voting on the main motion to Article C. So unlike the previous motion, which was a procedural vote, this is a substantive vote, voting on the actual main motion under Article C, and that's a majority vote. You'll see 1, 2, and 3 showing up on your screen. The timer shows 30. As we start to count down, you can vote. Voting begins now. Town meeting members, please vote on Article 1C. It's a majority vote. Town meeting is continuing with the warrant now chronologically. And after this vote, we will continue with Article 2A, on which we have many motions. We're completing, however, the vote on Article 1C. It's a majority vote. We're scrolling through the precincts momentarily after we show the results. 93 yes, 29 no, 2 abstentions. It carries, and we're now going to continue on looking at the precincts and as to how the vote occurred. Again, note that we're now up to, it looks like 123 voting. So we're climbing with our votes, and we're getting close to almost all town meeting members participating with the voting. A high turnout today, as well as high numbers voting. We're in precincts 10, 11, and 12 as we continue to scroll through the precincts. And we're continuing with precincts 13, 14, and 15. And as we look at the final precincts, we're going to go to Article 2A. And the first motion is going to be the motion for Subcommittee Report A. And Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend the votes taken at the 2021 Spring Annual Town Meeting under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report A, by increasing the original appropriation by $5,030, items 1 to 13, for the purposes as listed and provided, Articles 2A and 2B, Fiscal 22 Budget Amendments Report. Mr. Canty.
Although you will be taking multiple votes as to 2A as town meeting, the Advisory and Finance Committee issued one vote and one recommendation as to Article 2A. And therefore, my remarks will cover all of the sub-motions that you will be making and voting on in regards to 2A. With that in mind, the Advisory and Finance Committee, in a vote of 10-0 with 1 abstention, does recommend that town meeting approve Article 2A in its entirety. Approval of this article will increase the fiscal year 22 general fund operating budget by $2,009,285 as detailed in the materials.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Margaret Cohen on a point of order. Margaret Cohen is Precinct 3. So we're going to bring her in. I don't have any other speaker requests for this first motion, but we will bring in Margaret Cohen on her point of order. This is Plymouth's Fall Annual Town Meeting coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. If there are questions on this matter, we have the town manager, the town clerk, and the director of finance available. We're now going to hear from Margaret Cohen on her point of order. She is Precinct 3, and we're going to bring her in as a town meeting member to speak on her point of order. And town meeting members are also now preparing to vote on Article 2A, Motion Subcommittee Report A. And we're continuing to wait to bring in Precinct 3. There she is, Margaret. We have your audio. Go. Oh, no, you muted yourself. Unmute if you would. There you are. Go ahead and speak. Oh, you're muted again. Go ahead. There you're unmuted. Go ahead. Please.
Yes. I apologize, Mr. Moderator, for that. I guess that technical difficulty, though I don't know how it occurred. My vote was not registered for the final decision on 1C. I voted yes.
Thank you, Margaret Cohen. Precinct 11, Christopher Merrill. We're going to bring him in to speak on the motion under Article 2A, Subcommittee Report A. Christopher Merrill is in Precinct 11. And this again is the fall annual town meeting. It's coming to you live. There are a few of us here at PAC TV. Most people are at home participating remotely. And Mr. Merrill, welcome back. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My question is in regards to the grant writer for the Subcommittee A. In regards to the grant writer, if this position is fulfilled, how is this going to be prioritized between departments if they have multiple grants in the queue? And also, follow-up to that is, has the town done a cost-benefit analysis to look for a subcontractor to do grant writing instead of hiring someone within? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in the town manager, Melissa Arrighi, responding to town meeting member Christopher Merrill regarding the grant writer. Welcome back, Melissa Arrighi, our town manager.
Thank you very much. No, Chris, we did not look at outsourcing grant writing, and I think there were a couple of reasons for that. The first is internally with staff, we do a phenomenal job receiving grants, and you've seen that at so many of the town meetings, whether it is the Department of Marine Environmental Affairs or the Health Department. Many of the staff members, division heads and department heads, write and receive their own grants. In this case, to bring on a full-time grant writer, that would be somebody that can look at other opportunities that may be available to us that we have been missing. The select board voted that this was really a priority for them. They felt that there was plenty of funding that is out there, both at the state and federal level. And although we are able to capture much of that, particularly in our own specific areas, there are other opportunities that are available that we can take advantage of. And this grant writer will concentrate on that. I do not believe the grant writer position, though, will take away from those specific grants that are still being sought in other divisions and departments, but it can certainly enhance it and help out in that area.
Thank you. Mr. Merrill, further comments?
No further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'm not seeing any speakers. We're going to move to the vote under Article 2A, Subcommittee Report A. You'll see momentarily on your screen that you can vote 1, 2, or 3, 1 being yes, 2 no, 3 abstain. We're looking for the timer. There it is, 30 seconds. When the timer moves, you can start to vote now. Please vote on Article 2A, Motion Subcommittee Report A. It's a majority vote. Town meeting members will continue after this with a motion on Subcommittee Report B1 under Article 2A. It'll be motion number 1 under Subcommittee Report B1. Meanwhile, the timer is counting down for the motion on Subcommittee Report A. We've completed. We're now going to look for the results from town meeting. It's a majority vote. Town meeting has voted on the motion for Subcommittee Report A, and we're tabulating the votes. They're voting electronically. Polling is closed. 104 yes, 14 no, 1 abstention. It carries. It's a majority vote. We're now going to continue. And as we scroll through the precincts, we've got a very large motion. I'll read into the record. Mr. Canty moves town vote to amend the votes taken at the 2021 Spring Annual Town Meeting under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report B1, by increasing the original appropriation of $76,563,583 by $474,040 for a total appropriation of $77,037,623, items 14 to 28, for the purposes detailed in Articles 2A and 2B Fiscal 22 Budget Amendments Report, and to meet said increased appropriation, make the following additional transfers. You have those listed transfers in your text. This is going to be a majority vote. We've now gone through all the precincts, and so we'll now take any discussion on Motion 1, Subcommittee Report B1. We're not seeing any speakers in the queue, so we're going to go to the vote on Motion 1, Subcommittee Report B1. And so we're looking for a vote on your screen. There it is. And now the timer is there. We'll start to count down, and you can vote now. You're voting on Motion 1, Subcommittee Report B1. This is a majority vote. Town meeting members are using a V-Voter platform from OTI Technologies, and they are using the Zoom webinar video conferencing, and together they are participating remotely and participating pursuant to Massachusetts general laws that are now allow remote participation. We've concluded the voting. We're now waiting for the results. 106 yes, 10 no, 2 abstentions. It carries. We're going to go and look at how you voted in the precincts. You'll see this time we had 118 people voting. And so we're going to continue, and I will read into the record as we scroll through the precincts. Motion 2, Subcommittee Report B1. Mr. Canty moves town vote to amend the funding sources approved by the votes taken at the 2021 Spring Annual Town Meeting under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report B1, by transferring $600,667 from the stabilization fund and reducing by a like amount the amount raised by the 2022 tax levy. And this is going to require a 2/3 vote. We've seen all the precincts on the last vote. So now we're looking for any speakers on Motion 2, Subcommittee Report B1. We have one speaker, and we're going to receive it from Everett Malaguti, who wishes to make a motion to amend, but we're going to first go to Richard Cirque on a point of order. Let's jump to the point of order first. Mr. Cirque is in Precinct 2, Mr. Malaguti is in Precinct 1. I'm going to go to Richard Cirque first on a point of order. Richard Cirque is a town meeting member. He's coming in. If you can unmute, you're unmuted, Mr. Cirque. Go ahead.
Just a point of order that my vote on the immediately preceding motion was not registered. It was a yes.
A yes. Thank you, Mr. Cirque. Everett Malaguti is in Precinct 1. We're now going to go to Everett Malaguti. He has a motion to amend. This is a procedural motion. Although the main motion requires a 2/3 vote, a motion to amend would be a majority vote. We'll have to first see. I don't believe I've received this in advance, so I will need to determine whether or not I can accept the motion to amend. Mr. Malaguti, unmute yourself, and you're unmuted. Proceed. Go ahead.
Yes, Everett Malaguti, Precinct 1. And sorry, Mr. Trifiletti, for the delay. I just thought of this during the last couple of minutes. I would like to make a motion to amend to substitute for funding stabilization fund for the following funding source: free cash, as was mentioned prior in lots of emails that we received for town meeting handouts and the certified free cash well into the millions that is remaining. I believe there's sufficient funding to carry over for the next budgetary cycle to allow us to siphon off around 600,000 of this to substitute the stabilization fund and keep the stabilization fund intact to continue to grow for when we will necessarily need it, which could be in 2 years, maybe longer, depending on how political negotiations and other things turn out. So I'm asking for the substituting of funding source from stabilization fund for free cash for this article. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll accept the motion to amend. I'm going to go to Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance, responding to the motion to amend, since this is just coming before town meeting at this time. Ms. Barrett, if you could explain how this would change, substituting free cash for the stabilization fund.
So free cash is a legal substitute for this recommendation. My original recommendation was to take the 600,000 out of our general municipal stabilization fund, not the specific nuclear mitigation stabilization fund, which is our next recommendation in the next motion. However, his substitute is legal. My recommendation was obviously prior to us getting certification of free cash. And it's really just to help offset the tax rate for the reduction in the meals tax we had seen during the pandemic. Thank you.
And now we're going to go to Precinct 12, Betsy Hall. Betsy Hall is asked to speak on the motion to amend or on the main motion. They're both before you, but the first vote will be on the motion to amend. So we're bringing in Betsy Hall as a speaker, and we have Mr. Malaguti's motion to amend, and we also have the main motion. This is Plymouth Town Meeting. It's coming to you live on October 16. Betsy Hall, if you can unmute yourself and we can see you, go ahead, proceed.
Yes, I am going to ask my fellow town meeting members to vote against using either the nuclear mitigation fund or free cash at this time. I think that we're going to see a lot more fallout from the coronavirus that we've experienced. I think that the town is going to be stressed financially. The management has asked for a number of new hires. That is going to mean more benefits and more salary. And I'm disappointed, I'm disappointed not to see more reduction in expenses from the executive branch. I think that there are positions that could be eliminated as people retire from their positions. I think we have positions in the town that are not safety issue or town government issue that could be eliminated as they are as someone retires. I'm not looking to fire anybody, but I think we need to get really serious about reducing our budget as best as we can. And there are many items that we can't reduce. We can't reduce our electrical bill or our oil bill or whatever it is, but we certainly can eliminate some positions, and we can look at other ways to save money. So I think that if we really need this $2 million, it should go into our taxes, and people will know where the spending is happening. They won't be invisible because it's taken from a nuclear mitigation fund or from a free cash. It'll be visible in all of our tax bills, and people can then give feedback to the executive branch that they want to see more conservative fiscal policy. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is town meeting member
Sorry for the dog.
Betsy
Thank
Hall
you.
coming to you live from her home with other occupant or occupants wanting to be heard, as well as we go again to the discussion on motion 2, subcommittee report B1. We don't have any other speakers, so we're going to be going to the motion to amend from Everett Malaguti. So this is a majority vote. It's a motion to amend to substitute free cash for the stabilization fund on the main motion. Town meeting members have an opportunity now to vote whether to amend. 1 is a yes, 2 is a no, 3 abstention. You have a chance to vote on whether to amend the main motion. And the timer is there, 30 seconds. When we start to count down now, you can now vote. You're voting on a motion to amend the Article 2A, Motion 2, Subcommittee Report B1, and it's a motion to amend from town meeting member Everett Malaguti, substitute free cash for the stabilization fund. It's a majority vote. on the motion to amend. The main motion will be a 2/3 vote. But we're now voting on the motion to amend. Voting is complete. The results, 69 say yes, 55 say no, 2 abstentions. The motion carries. We now have a main motion as amended. It's been amended by that motion to amend from Everett Malaguti, and we are now continuing with the main motion as amended. We're scrolling through the precincts to make sure that people have their vote correctly recorded. We're at precincts 13, 14, and 15. Again, green is yes, red is no, and yellow abstention. We've now gone through all the precincts. We don't see any other speakers, so we're going to go to the main motion, motion 2, subcommittee report B1, and this is going to require a 2/3 vote of town meeting. So now it's only going to be a majority because it's not stabilization, it's free cash. So that's going to change the quantum of vote from 2/3 to a majority. And town meeting members, you'll see 1 is a yes, 2 is a no, 3 abstentions, and the timer shows 30 seconds, and we're going to begin voting now. So again, by approving the motion to amend to change from free cash to stabilization, it changed the quantum to vote on the main motion. For the use of stabilization funds, we need a 2/3 vote. For the use of free cash, we need a majority vote. So this will now be a majority vote of town meeting in order to approve the main motion as amended. Town meeting members complete their vote, and the voting now ends. We're going to wait for the results. The poll is closed. 108 yes, 15 no, 1 abstention. The motion carries by more than a majority. And now we're going to scroll through the precincts. And as we scroll through the precincts, we're going to listen to the next motion, number 3, Subcommittee Report B1. Mr. Candy moves the town vote to amend the funding sources approved by votes taken at 2021 Spring Annual Town Meeting under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report B1, by transferring $2 million from the Nuclear Mitigation Stabilization Fund and reducing by a like amount the amount raised by the 2022 tax levy. Mr. Canty has already given his comments on all of the motions under this article, so we're now going to go to a motion to amend. Mr. Williams, Precinct 8, Donald Williams, moves to substitute for the Nuclear Mitigation Stabilization Fund the following funding source: free cash. Donald Williams, on your motion to amend, do you care to be heard? Let's bring in Precinct 8, Town Meeting Member Donald Williams. There he is. Welcome back, Mr. Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trifletti. I have many of the same arguments, but let's look at the math for this. We have currently $7.55 million in the Nuclear Mitigation Fund. We are receiving less and less from Holtec. The last contribution was $6.5 million in 2021. That could be put into that. As you know, it's a discretionary thing about what the town does and how much money they put into it. What worries me here is that when Holtec finally divests that property and some higher power determines that they're done, we may not be done. I am worried about expenses that might be incurred long after Holtec is going down the road laughing like mad. And I think that we should take the free cash to pay for this, because our mitigation fund, our nuclear mitigation fund, only has 7.55 million, and we're gutting it prematurely, I believe. We have 19.7 million in free cash. And my opinion is that we ought to hold what we have in the mitigation fund for as long as we possibly can before using it. Thank you. I urge you to vote that we make this amendment to the motion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Donald Williams. We're now going to go to Precinct 5, Belinda Brewster. We're debating both the motion to amend as well as the main motion. Belinda Brewster is a town meeting member from Precinct 5, and we're going to bring her in to vote and to, she'll be voting later, but she'll be talking now on the vote that'll be coming up. She's come in. Belinda, if you can unmute yourself, and we'll go ahead and we'll listen to your comments on the motion to amend or the main motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to address some of Betsy Hall's comments and also to explain free cash as I understand it. Free cash is not free money that you get from the state. It is the taxpayers' dollars. Free cash is the money that was sort of over budgeted in the prior budget. It was money that was not used. It was appropriated to fill positions that didn't get filled. So it's like a $19 million, which my understanding too, that is a really big amount. I mean, it's like twice what it normally is, maybe even 3 times normally what free cash is. So for whatever reason in the past budgetary year, a lot of the money was not used. So I think it's very appropriate to use these increases that are needed or are requested to use free cash for that, as they were initial budget items that were used. So I think it's a good use of free cash. Also, free cash is often used for all of our capital outlay requests that come in to buy all the bright new things that the town wants and or needs. And I think being using more of it for budgetary reasons as opposed to buying, we've got all this money in free cash, so let's use it to buy all these new things. So I think it's very appropriate for all of these increases to be taken out of free cash, which again is an over budgeting number from the prior budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda Brewster. She's in Precinct 5. We're debating the motion to amend under Motion 3, Subcommittee Report B1. And I don't see any other speakers. I'm being told one is coming in on the V-Voter platform. And so we'll continue the debate. It is Precinct 7, Nathan Siegel. So let's bring in Mr. Siegel. We're debating the motion to amend as well as the main Motion 3 Subcommittee Report B1. Precinct 7, Nathan Siegel. Mr. Siegel, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and start speaking.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nate Siegel, Precinct 7. So I watched the preview forum and the presentation forum and everything, and read the supplements. But I still just want to make sure that I'm fully understanding the various transfers of funding for this motion. So I was hoping Ms. Barrett might be able to confirm. My understanding is that basically the request is for about $2 million to be transferred from the Nuclear Mitigation Fund into the general fund to help cover sort of the loss due to COVID from the meals tax. The meals tax didn't come in as high as expected due to basically the conditions of the pandemic. So we're proposing to take about $2 million from the Nuclear Mitigation Fund to help cover that. And basically the motion to amend would be to say, rather than taking that from the Nuclear Mitigation Fund, let's take that from our 19 million in free cash instead and apply that to the general fund. So hoping that maybe Ms. Barrett might be able to confirm that's a correct understanding.
Yes, Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance, if you can respond, and I believe we now have a lower number than 19 million based on our last vote. Ms. Barrett.
So I just want to be clear, we had 2 motions to use 2 different stabilization funds to help reduce taxes for taxpayers. The first one was the one that we just voted previously. We recommended to use general stabilization for the loss in the meals tax. Town meeting voted to substitute free cash for that. That one has been voted. This second motion to use $2 million from the Nuclear Mitigation Fund is to also reduce the tax rate, which, because of Holtec's value in that property reducing by about half, so their tax payment is going to be reduced by about half, which represents about almost $3.5 million tax payment. So when that happens, that shift sort of goes to everybody else. So what we're recommending is use 2 million of nuclear mitigation to help offset that, so that we're not raising that $2 million from taxes. Your motion is to substitute free cash for that, which is a legal substitution for nuclear mitigation. However, I just want to point out that when we initially set up this fund, that was one of the reasons why we set aside this money, was for that tax effect. So just so you know. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Could I follow up with a quick question?
Go ahead, Mr. Siegel.
Thank you. So Ms. Baird, do you have any major concerns with tapping into that? Now it's a little bit less than 19 million. Do you have major concerns if that's going to prevent us from doing other things? I mean, I know, like you just said, it's a good point that that's the point of the Nuclear Mitigation Fund. It's sort of being proposed to use it in its intended purpose. But to Mr. Williams' point and others, probably a safe bet to keep that fund viable as long as possible. We just don't know what's coming. And 19 million or a little bit less than 19 million is quite a lot. I mean, do you have any major concerns of shifting that funding source?
Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance.
So I am not opposed to using the free cash as a substitute. And as Ms. Brewster did point out, this is much higher than we have ever seen before. And that is the reason why I sent out that document that explained where this came from. I don't think anyone could have predicted this pandemic and how it was going to affect our local economy, our budgets. And I think I tried to explain where it came from and why. And I do not see that ever happening again. That being said, I'm not opposed to using free cash for this. I just want to point out that free cash and stabilization funds, once it's all used up and it's gone, then it's not there anymore to help support the operating budget. That's just a general statement, and one that, we will always use going into the future with regards to operating budget versus capital. So even if we do use 2 million out of that 19.7, we're using another 2 million in Article 4. I mean, we will still have funds remaining to work on other capital for the annual in the spring, and to hopefully set aside more in some other stabilization funds to help the town do several things.
Thank you, Lynn.
So I hope I
Director of
answered your
Finance.
question.
Yep, you did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And at this time, we have no other speakers. We're going to move to the motion to amend. Motion 3, Subcommittee Report B1. It's a procedural motion presented from Donald Williams. You'll see it on the screen. You can vote 1, 2, or 3, 30 seconds on the timer. And when it starts to click, we'll start to vote. Vote now. You can now vote. It's a majority vote on a motion to amend to, again, substitute free cash for the Nuclear Mitigation Stabilization Fund. Town meeting members have been in town meeting for about 3.5 hours. We'll continue for approximately another half hour, at which time we'll take our noon recess, and then we'll be returning back shortly after that. Voting has concluded. The polls have closed. We're now going to see the totals on whether or not this motion to amend moves forward. 97 yes, 24 no, 3 abstentions. It passes. We're now going to move to the main motion as amended. And once again, this will be a majority vote due to the change. So despite what your packet tells you, due to the motion to amend, it's going to be a majority vote on the main motion. Again, you have the main motion. It is to amend the funding sources approved by the votes taken in 2021 spring annual town meeting. And town meeting members will get a chance to vote on this main motion as amended. We're going to again show you that you'll be able to vote by clicking onto 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The timer will show 30 seconds on the clock. When it begins, you can start to vote. Town meeting members can vote now. Motion 3, Subcommittee Report B1. It's a majority vote, and once we conclude, we'll go to Motion Subcommittee Report B2. Town meeting is continuing in the warrant for the 2021 Fall Annual Town Meeting. It's coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. Town meeting has concluded the vote for Motion 3. Yes, 111, no, 7, 2 abstentions. The motion carries by more than a majority. And as we scroll through the precincts, I will read into the record the motion for Subcommittee Report B2. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend the funding sources approved by the votes taken at the 2021 Spring Annual Town Meeting under Article 7A Subcommittee Report B2 by decreasing the original amount of $1,034,000 transferred from the Pavement Management Stabilization Fund by $185,203 for a total transfer of $848,797. It's a majority vote. A roll call if it's not unanimous, which all of these are roll call due to the electronic voting. And Lynn Barrett is available to answer any questions. I'm not seeing any speakers, so we're going to go right to the vote on the main motion for Subcommittee Report B2. A point of order from Richard Cirque. Precinct 2, Richard Cirque has a point of order. We'll call in Mr. Cirque first before we go to the vote on the motion for Subcommittee Report B2. Richard Cirque is a town meeting member in Precinct 2. Town meeting members have the option through V-Voter to raise a point of order if their vote is missed or if they have a question. Mr. Cirque, proceed.
My vote on the immediately preceding article was yes.
Thank you, Richard Cirque. And for any town meeting member, if you're having difficulty having your vote register, please call the help desk. You could also talk to the assistant town moderator in the chat, try to help you out. But we're now going to vote on the main motion on Subcommittee Report B2. So that'll be coming up on your screen momentarily. There it is. And the timer will show 30 seconds to vote, and there it is. And we're going to be counting down momentarily. The vote begins now. Town meeting is now voting on Subcommittee Report B2. It's a majority vote. Town meeting is continuing to move through the warrant. We have multiple motions under these articles, and so town meeting is continuing. It's a majority vote. This is a main motion, a motion for Subcommittee Report B2. The vote is now concluding, and it has finished. We'll now see 122 in favor, 3 no, 1 abstentions. It carries. And as we go through the precincts to make sure that your vote was correctly tabulated, please look. We're starting with precincts 4, 5, and 6. And as we go through the precincts and you check your votes, we will read. By the way, I would notice 126 out of 135 town meeting members. We continue to increase attendance and we continue to increase the voting, and it's a very high percentage of town meeting members present and voting. Subcommittee Report C. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend the votes taken at 2021 Spring Annual Town Meeting under Article 7A Subcommittee Report C by increasing the amount appropriated for the fire department. All other expenses, line number 33, by $19,930 as detailed in the Articles 2A and 2B Fiscal 22 Budget Amendments Report. It's a majority vote, and we'll be voting electronically. And we're now going to go to speakers, and I'm going to call on Precinct 10, Alan Costello. Mr. Costello, we're going to bring you in to speak to Plymouth Town Meeting. Mr. Costello is a town meeting member from Precinct 10, and we welcome him to this morning session of our Fall 2021 Annual Town Meeting. I can see you, Mr. Costello. You can unmute yourself and go ahead and speak.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. I was wondering if I could speak or have someone from staff answer a couple of questions on Subcommittee C, actually both line items. I had a question on, after watching the presentation, this catastrophic failure of this transmission was only one thing that happened during the course of the year. I was wondering what the vehicle maintenance budget for the fire department is on a yearly basis.
We're going to bring in Fire Chief Edward Bradley, responding to Mr. Costello on Subcommittee Report C. Mr. Bradley, welcome back to Plymouth Town Meeting. If you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
The annual budget for the fire department maintenance is $117,000, and that's your regular preventive maintenance, as well as the any of the breakdowns. Now, this particular one happened early in the year. We know that there's going to be some mechanical failure during the year, and we don't know exactly what it is. So there's money budgeted, but to have a transmission fail early in the year like that would leave the budget short and probably not be able to make it through the year. We typically, this is only the third time since we've had automatic transmissions, which we started buying in 1970. It was on one of our ladder trucks. It's only the third one that's had a catastrophic failure like this. So it isn't something that was budgeted for or prepared for.
Thank you. Mr. Costello, any further questions?
Yes, I do. I'd like to know if what the remaining balance in the maintenance budget is at this time. And to follow up on that, if you were to exhaust the maintenance budget line item, would the emergency fund the FinCom has available, would that fit your use if you did need to do additional maintenance?
Mr. Bradley, do you know the answer to that question regarding the remaining balance in the maintenance budget?
Oh, I'd have to pull up the municipal account to be able to look at that right now to give you the budget, the number as of today. But as far as if we go short, one of the areas would be able to go to the Finance Committee for the Reserve Fund transfer.
30
and
seconds.
Of course, if it was happening in the last month of the year, it could be a transfer.
Thank you. Mr. Costello, any further comments?
Quickly, how many of these engines does the town have in its inventory?
Mr. Bradley?
We have 10 pumping engines, 1 heavy rescue truck, 3 ladder trucks.
Specifically the engines. Could we have pulled a spare engine out of, I thought we had 3 spares 2 or 3 meetings ago. Could we have used a spare engine in the interim instead of fixing this transmission in an emergency basis?
We did pull a spare truck in the interim while we waited for that transmission to be fixed. And I think it was almost 2 months before that truck was back. Currently today, we have 2 other frontline trucks out and 2 reserve trucks in frontline service. So we try to get them back in service as quickly as you can because, you know, there are other things going on. With 44 pieces of apparatus, you're going to have some issues.
And then my final question would move on to the second line item, the communications tower rental. Obviously, this is in excess of what you originally asked for due to the tower, the full-time communication tower being erected. Is this the last time we're going to see a line item for this temporary tower?
As long as the vendor is able to finish the construction as he's, within the contract, We're always worried about supply chain right now and equipment, and so isn't the vendor. But they hope to have it done so that this will be the last time that we'd have to have a transfer and keep the temporary tower on site.
Thank
During
you,
the
Mr. Bradley.
presentation, one final question. During the presentation, we were told that they were going to start in September. Has the ground been broken to start the process of the full-time permanent tower?
The contractor mobilized September 27th and has been on site since then. They are clearing land right now, and they were working with the town surveyors to actually mark out the exact location now that the land has been cleared of trees.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm all set.
Costello. Mr. Bradley, we're going to
Thank you.
move on to Precinct 8, Paul Cunningham, speaking on the motion for Subcommittee Report C. Mr. Cunningham, we want to welcome you back. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Cunningham, Precinct 8. I want to discuss this trailer issue. I do plan to vote yes on it because it's continuing a previous decision. But no town meeting member has voted on this subject before because it was funded through the A&F emergency funds of $150,000. So the responsible department, fearing a hurricane in 2020, decided to take down the tower, 40-year-old tower, and replace it with a rental trailer from Oklahoma. So we've been renting that for the better part of 2 years. So even though I'm going to vote yes, I'd like to know what is the total cost, including the $9,000, is it that we're going to have spent on this rental trailer, and does it include the cost of returning it to Oklahoma? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Edward Bradley, Fire Chief, responding. Town Meeting Member Paul Cunningham. Mr. Bradley.
The cost is $3,000 per month. I'd have to go back over the paperwork to see when we actually got it. But when we had it delivered, also part of that setup was the charge for them to come and return it back to Oklahoma. So that's already been paid for.
Any further questions, Mr. Cunningham?
But so we have no idea what the amount was that was spent. Of it was in the 60s to 70,000 last time I asked the question.
Mr. Bradley.
Again, without going into the munis program right now and seeing what was spent to date, no, I don't need to be guessing.
Thank you. Any further comments?
That's all, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Subcommittee Report C? If not, we're going to go to vote. It's a majority vote on Subcommittee Report C, and Town Meeting will have an opportunity to vote on this. You see it on your screen. The timer is going to come up. You'll have 30 seconds in which to vote. The timer will be showing momentarily. It shows now. As we start to vote, the timer starts to go down. Now you can start to vote now. Town meeting members are voting on Subcommittee Report C, and as a majority vote, Town Meeting will then continue with Subcommittee Report D. We're still in the morning session, coming to you live on Saturday, October 16. Town Meeting members are using the OTI vVoter platform and also a Zoom webinar video conferencing platform. Voting has concluded. The polling has closed. 116 in favor, 5 no, 0 abstentions. It carries. It's a majority. We're going to continue on. As you look at the precincts to see how you voted, we'll read into the record Subcommittee Report D. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend the votes taken at the 2021 Spring Annual Town Meeting under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report D, by increasing the amount appropriated for Department of Public Works Personal Services line number 40 by $90,003 as detailed in Articles 2A and 2B Fiscal 22 Budget Amendments Report. It's a majority vote. Mr. Canty has already made his comments. I may come back to him on the motion to amend. This motion just came in this morning, so town meeting members, you do not have it. It is Catherine Holmes moves to amend to reduce by $53,682. And Catherine Holmes, we're going to bring you in on your motion to amend so you can speak to your motion to amend. And in the meantime, I see that Geraldine Williams also wants to do a motion to amend. Geraldine, if you can submit that in writing, perhaps in an email to me or in the chat so we can start to look at that. But meanwhile, Catherine Holmes, if you can come in, we'll bring her in. There she is, Precinct 8. Unmute yourself, Catherine, and you can begin to explain your motion to amend to reduce by $53,682. Catherine.
Okay, hold on, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I put in this motion, and there's no question that our cemeteries need support. We can't continue to hire new staff when we have no way to pay for them other than raising our residents' property taxes. I have submitted this motion to cut the funding to eliminate the need for hiring 5 additional full-time workers that will cost taxpayers, according to Lynn's estimate, $209,775,000 a year. I'm having my screen's going in and out for some reason. Forgive me.
We can hear you.
So it's going
to,
according to Lynn's estimate, this is going to cost the taxpayers $209,775,000 a year. These 5 workers will also qualify for pension and benefits at over $250,000, estimated at $283,196 per year. My motion is put in place so it will still allow for temporary cemetery staff workers, which this will cover, but it's making the decision to say, no, we're not going to, at this current time, hire full-time workers for these specific positions. And here's why. We need a long-term strategy here with a well thought out funding source. And until that happens, we need to cover this work with temporary contract landscapers or excavators at the right price. It would not only bring revenue to our local small businesses, which I am a huge supporter of, it will eliminate the overall cost to the taxpayer. So these workers, they're going to eventually retire, and we will be funding their retirement while paying for new staffers with this current plan. It will be funding it was going to be funded out of our nuclear mitigation fund. I'm having some really weird things happening over here. So now it's going to be funded out of the free cash fund. So in the spring, if we vote to approve this, we're still going to have to find a legitimate long-term funding source that doesn't increase our taxes. And that makes no sense to me. Now, the DPW is going to caution you that they're not able to find anyone who's willing to support this type of contract work last year, or that the price of workers has doubled in the cost. But there is no way, with all the benefits, the vacations, the pensions, that contractors would not be more economical. And I believe at the right price, we can source this in an economically hungry environment, which we have today. Now, lastly, they reference that they're looking to raise the rates of burial fees that would cover some of these costs. And if they were able to find confirmed and agreed revenue sources that would be supported with support these new resource costs over the next 6 months, then I would fully support the hiring of these additional full-time staff workers for the cemetery in the spring town meeting. But I strongly believe that we need to send a strong message that these articles need to have a legitimate funding sources that is simply not on the backs of the taxpayer. I asked the DPW to come back to us in 6 months in the spring when you have these revenue increases finalized and we can understand them exactly how this is going to be sourced. We have got to get real about our budget, and I ask you to support my motion. Thank you.
We're going to go to Betty Cavaco. She's the select board liaison with this DPW matter. And while we bring her in, Geraldine Williams, I have emailed you regarding your motion to amend request, if you could respond with your written motion. Betty Cavaco, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I appreciate the opportunity to clarify a little bit of this information that Ms. Holmes brought up. Just so the town meeting members know, is that the prevailing wage for this type of position, which is what Ms. Holmes is actually recommending, is $61.18 per hour. That is probably double, actually more than double, of what it would cost for us to hire these laborers with their benefits package, which is about an additional $8 an hour. And they will be coming in at like $23, $24 an hour. So I believe that this is very fiscally irresponsible, because when we hire contractors, we have to pay prevailing wage. It's not, we're gonna bring in contractors for the same amount of money that our people are getting. We're actually, in fact, going to be double and triple in some of our instances to do this. So with bringing these people in, not only do they have the ownership to the community, but bringing them in at the rate with their benefits package is much, much less than what we would have to pay if we contracted the service out. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Betty Cavaco, and she is the liaison from the Select Board. I do have a procedural motion to close debate. This would be to close debate on the motion to amend from Catherine Holmes. That is from Precinct 11, Jeffrey Delap. And in the meantime, I have three people seeking to speak, Mr. Neville, Mr. Malaguti, Mr. Weber. And we are currently determining whether to close debate on the motion to amend. And at this time, we're going to call that up. You're now deciding whether to close debate on Ms. Holmes's motion to amend. We'll show on your screen that you're able to vote as to whether to close debate on her motion to amend. It's a 2/3 vote on whether to close debate. You can disregard, there we go. There's the motion on which you'll be voting. And we're going to look at the timer at 30. As it starts to count down, you can vote now. You're voting on whether to close debate on a motion to amend from Town Meeting Member Catherine Holmes. She moves to reduce Subcommittee Report D by $53,682. Following that, I'm going to bring in Precinct, well, we'll see first what happens on this motion to close debate. We'll determine whether or not we're going to be continuing to discuss that. 83 say close it, 39 say no, 0 abstentions, passes by more than 2/3. We will now vote on the motion to amend. It is a majority vote, and you're voting now after we scroll through the precincts. Let's look at precincts 4, 5, and 6. We're going to continue to scroll through the precincts. Make sure your vote are correctly recorded. And we're going to continue precincts 10, 11, and 12. And once we go through the precincts, we'll then be taking a vote on the motion to amend from Catherine Holmes. Thereafter, I'm going to go to Precinct 8, Geraldine Williams, who has indicated she has a motion to amend. Precincts 1, 2, and 3, we've shown them all. And so now we're going to go ahead and close debate. And we're now going to vote on Catherine Holmes's motion to amend. So we're going to call up on the screen a motion to amend graphic. And once we have that graphic, you'll be able to vote 1 yes, 2 no, 3 abstention. And so we're waiting for the graphic to appear on the vVoter platform for town meeting members. There it is. Amend Article 2A Subcommittee Report D. The timer is there at 30. You can start to vote when the timing now. Town meeting members are voting on a motion to amend. Catherine Holmes moved to amend Subcommittee Report D, reducing by $53,682. It is a motion to amend, and we're going to look to see how town meeting vote on this particular motion to amend the main motion. Town meeting members have had 30 seconds to vote, and the voting is now completed. The poll is closed. The results, 57 say yes, no 70, 0 abstention. It does not carry. We're going to scroll through the precincts. As we do that, I would like to bring in Precinct 8, Geraldine Williams. She has a motion to amend, and she says that her motion is to reduce the number of full-time cemetery workers to 2. So again, Jerry, much with Catherine Holmes's motion, we need a dollar amount. All town meeting can do, town meeting cannot decide how many cemetery workers. What you can decide is the funding. And so you saw Catherine Holmes's motion was to reduce by $53,000, and after considerable time this morning with the Director of Finance and with the Director, Department of Public Works, she came up with this figure based on her intent. In your case, you need to give us a figure or we're not going to be able to receive a motion to amend at this late hour. We certainly later could move to reconsider depending on the final outcome of the main motion. But while I'm, let's call in Jerry Williams, she's here. Jerry, why don't you speak to us? I can't see you, but we can hear you. Go ahead.
I make a motion to amend my motion would be to amend this by removing 2 workers, which would be $33,903. I didn't finish the math to subtract that. I guess it would, let me just
Well, you don't need to
finish
do the
the
math.
math.
I think I've got your motion. Your
Okay.
motion is to reduce the main motion by $33,903. On your motion, what do you wish to say?
I'm sorry.
Do you wish to,
I'm confused.
do you wish to argue on your motion? I've accepted your motion to amend.
Yes, okay.
Go ahead.
I believe that we need to, as Catherine said, know exactly what all this is going to cost us in the long run and how it's going to be paid for. When I look at all the equipment that's being requested from the cemetery funds, et cetera, I don't see how the cemetery is paying for itself. And so I can see that they need help. So that's why I'm requesting that we reduce it to just 2 full-time people at this point, and that it come back to spring meeting with justification of how it's going to be paid for.
Thank you. Betty Cavaco is the liaison from the Select Board. Let's bring back in Betty Cavaco to speak on this. Betty Cavaco, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Perfletti. Again, five cemetery workers. We are adding quite a bit of equipment. We actually need people to be able to operate that equipment. We've had many issues in the cemeteries, and there is nothing worse than hearing from someone if a cemetery isn't well cared for. We don't have the people to do the burials. So I ask that town meeting support the original 5 people. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to amend? I'm not seeing any speakers. So we're going to go to the vote on the motion to amend to reduce Subcommittee Report D by $33,903. Town meeting members will see the graphic on being able to vote to amend. We're waiting for that graphic to appear. It will be one where you'll see that you can enter a vote of yes, no, or abstain. And once that comes up on your screen, we will then go to a timer. This is a motion to amend. A motion to amend is a majority vote. Town meeting members are completing their 4th hour. There's the motion. We're going to look for the timer. There's the timer. You're going to vote whether to amend by reducing $33,903. Please vote. Town meeting members, you can now vote on this. We're voting on a motion to amend Subcommittee Report D. And once we complete this, we will then continue to discuss Subcommittee Report D as amended or not. This is town meeting coming to you live on October 16. That completes the voting on the motion to amend. And we're going to see what the vote is. It is 44 say yes, 81 say no, 1 abstention. It does not carry. We're now back to the main motion on Subcommittee Report D. We're going to scroll through the precincts, and as we do, I see we brought in Precinct 1, Everett Malaguti, and we're not going to bring him in yet on video, but he can start to talk on audio. Mr. Malaguti, you need to unmute yourself. Go ahead, Mr. Malaguti. And we can bring him in
Everett
on video
Malaguti,
too.
Precinct.
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank
Malaguti.
you. Everett Malaguti, Precinct 1. I would like to state that I support this article for the increased laborers for the cemetery department. for numerous reasons, some of which Select Board Member Betty Cavaco had already mentioned, but I also am a sitting member on the town's new cemetery committee, and we've been discussing various parts of the entire dynamic surrounding the cemetery, from not just the burials and cremations, but to the labor work involved, the expansions that will be needed into the future, and all the funding sources that are required for this. Well, I agree wholeheartedly with all the comments and the rationale that Ms. Holmes put together, and I support her 100% for endeavoring that, because I too request to have funding sources available for any new hires with this. This, though, actually needs to have some attention toward it, as we've over the years and decades have decimated the DPW department in the amount of crew that is in there. And the cemetery department is one of the harshest ones because anytime that they get people in, the work that's needed and the pay scale that's needed, they actually transfer over to Parks Department or another department. We can't fill what's needed. We tried filling with seasonal workers. We barely got any over the past 2 to 3 years to fill those positions. Part of this funding for that is taking some of the money from the old seasonal worker positions and including it within this. So that's part of the funding mechanism, and revenues that are generated and even new revenues that will be generated through the cemetery division will help to offset this. I see this as a very prudent matter, as there aren't enough people to take care of the cemeteries that we need, whether it be mowing, burials, especially with a very wide town. If you have needs on one end and the other end at the same time, there's not even enough staff to even do that for just 2 burials. And so I think this is very prudent to do, and I hope that town meeting supports this.
30 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Malaguti. Precinct 10, Peter Neville. We're debating Subcommittee Report D. Mr. Neville, welcome back to Plymouth Town Meeting. We're at the noon hour. Mr. Neville. And this is coming to you live on October 16th. And we've been in our morning session for the past 4 hours. Mr. Neville, unmute yourself and you can proceed to address town meeting.
Thank you. Sorry, Steve. Thank you. It's Peter Neville, Precinct 10. I won't hold up lunch. I'm trying to keep track of the ins and outs of increases and decreases, the votes taken at the spring annual town meeting, and how they may impact the availability of free cash. So we've decreased amounts in prior articles, and here we are increasing. And I guess Lynn could speak to, is this a good question? Does this impact the availability of free cash that we've already, someone said it was around 19 million. And as a side note, I'm strongly in favor of beefing up the Department of Public Works and all departments. So I'm gonna vote in favor of this. But how does it affect free cash? Just a
Thank you.
educational.
Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance, responding to Peter Neville. Welcome back, Lynn Barrett.
The vote on Subcommittee D does not affect free cash at all. This is being raised through the tax rate.
Thank you. I'm going to go. Patricia McCarthy has a motion to close debate. It's not debatable. We have one person in the queue, Mr. Weber. We're now going to move to close debate on Subcommittee Report D. You'll see the graphic. It's a 2/3 vote. It's a procedural vote. We have one town meeting member who was in the queue, the speaker's queue. It's a 2/3 vote. We're looking for the graphic on the procedural motion to close debate. And you'll vote yes, 1, and there it is. And we're looking for the timer. The timer for 30 seconds has appeared. And as it starts to run, you can vote now. You're voting on closing debate on Subcommittee Report D. This is Plymouth Town Meeting. It's coming to you live on October 16. We are reaching the noon recess soon. We're currently voting a procedural motion as to whether to close debate on Subcommittee Report D. Voting is concluding, and it is now over. Well, now the poll has closed. The results will be shown, and the results are 108 yes, 16 no, 0 abstentions. It carries by more than 2/3. We're now going to vote on the main motion, Subcommittee Report D. And that main motion is before you. It's for the $90,003 that's detailed. We're waiting as we scroll through the precincts on the motion to close debate. You'll see precincts 13, 14, and 15, and finally precincts 1, 2, and 3. And so now we had 124 town meeting members who voted in that last vote. We're now going to vote on Subcommittee Report D. There's the graphic, looking for the timer. We'll have 30 seconds in which to vote. There's the timer. As we start to count down, they'll be able to vote now. You're voting on Subcommittee Report D. This will be the last vote before the noon recess. We're voting on Subcommittee Report D. It's a majority vote, and town meeting members will continue after the lunch recess with Subcommittee Report F. And town meeting is finishing their vote on Subcommittee Report D, and the voting has ended. And the results, 99 yes, 26 no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. And now we're going to scroll through the precincts. You'll see precincts 4, 5, and 6. We had one more person voting on the main motion, 125 voting. Again, we're within 10 votes of all town meeting members. I'm aware of at least one town meeting member that could not be with us due to illness. You can check with the town clerk for information as to town meeting members who are absent. We're scrolling through the precincts in order to determine the lunch recess will be for 30 minutes. So once we scroll through the precincts, and we have, this town meeting stands in recess to 12:35 p.m. Thank you.